Hello, friends. Welcome to the latest Unearthed Arcana. I'm very glad they released it early because I was having this mental dilemma of do I drive to Philadelphia and go to PAX Unplugged and then try to review it there? And I was like, with my luck, they'll release it while I'm mid-drive and I'll have 1,000 messages saying, hey, it's out, go check it out. And I would be like, I can't, I'm in the car. But they released it early, so I can, which is awesome. So, welcome everyone. We're going to be going through, and now I did, while I was in the barbershop waiting to get my haircut, read a lot of it. I didn't finish all of it, but I love the Cleric changes, because honestly, I feel like all they did was buff the Cleric, which, what are you talking about? It's just better in almost every way, I feel like. Maybe I'm wrong, and we'll talk about it. But yeah, Goliath was the secret race that was added. So here's what I'm going to do, because I want to be able to clip these things for some YouTube videos later. What we're going to do is start with something that was kind of under the radar as well, which is a blog post released an hour ago from Wizards of the Coast. So first of all, everybody over here live on YouTube, say hi to the YouTube folks watching after the fact. So as I stated, Wizards of the Coast released a blog post on D&D Beyond, posted from D&D Beyond staff, called Moving On From Race in 1D&D. Now, this is something that had been tossed around for a while. People were saying things like, why did they continue to use race? It isn't really a race, it's more of a species, right? Like, what type of creature are you? Let's switch to that. Now, what's interesting is, well, I'll get to it. Why don't I read the blog post? I'll show it to you here. We'll read it. It's very short, but there are potentially some larger sweeping implications that some folks may not be thinking about. So here it is right here. It says, Dungeons & Dragons has a history of evolving to meet the needs of our players and foster an inviting space for everyone. With that in mind, we understand race is a problematic term that has had prejudices links between real-world people and the fantasy peoples of D&D worlds. The usage of the term across D&D and popular IP has evolved now over time. Now it's time for the next evolution. Since the release of 5th edition of D&D in 2014, we have made the conscious decision to reduce the usage of the term race to only apply to the game mechanic. We took this a step further with the release of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, where we presented an alternative to character creation with untangled ability score improvements from your choice of playable people. We've also evolved the lore of the people throughout the D&D multiverse to be more diligent in extracting past prejudices, stereotypes, and unconscious biases. 1D&D, the code name for the next generation of D&D, by the way, remember it is a code name that could change, gives us an opportunity to go deeper into every component of D&D. The immense interest and level of feedback across the first few playtest materials shows us the value in having an open dialogue with our community about everything related to the game. In the next Unearthed Arcana, the one that we're going to be reviewing shortly, containing playtest materials for 1D&D, we are presenting a replacement for the term race. The new term is species. We know this is an important change to D&D, one that requires an open conversation with our community, and we want to be clear about a few things as we present the new term. We have made the decision to move on from using the term race everywhere in 1D&D, and we do not intend to return to that term. The term species was chosen in close coordination with multiple outside cultural consultants. In the survey of this Unearthed Arcana playtest, which will go live on December 21st, so 20 days from today, players will be able to give feedback on the term species along with everything else present in the playtest materials. Having an open conversation about the term race is important and challenging. That is why it's vital we foster a positive, open, and understanding dialogue with one another. We welcome your constructive feedback on this evolution and the many more evolutions to 1D&D that make this game exciting, open, and accessible to everyone. Dragons and elves belong in our world, and so do you. Fair enough. It really, at least, it's a nomenclature change, right? We move on in the world as we change language. Language is an ever-evolving thing, so it's going to be referred to as species now, as opposed to race. It's a pretty simple change. Again, I see what they're going for and what they're talking about here. People had brought this up in the past, like, why don't you change it to lineage, right? Because we have all the custom lineages. Why don't you change it to species? And we ended up getting species. I'm going to see what you guys are saying. It does seem, at least from here in the chat, somebody said, would species be worse than race? Potentially, why not ancestry? That's another option, right? Like I said, lineage, ancestry. It's a changing of one word. It also would technically remove the term sub-race, which could be problematic in and of itself. So I get it. It's a nomenclature change. It's just a thing we're going to have to deal with, and that's fine. Things evolve, and that's just how it is. Ancestry was used in Pathfinder. The only question I have about species change is what will be the adjective form for species. With race, you have racial. With ancestry, you have ancestral. Special, because it would be spelt special. It would be special, would be how you would say it, but it would be spelt special in the terminology. Ancestry, background class, ABC. Yeah, that's actually not a bad one, right? Do your ABCs, ancestry, background class. Well, they said they're not going to go back to using the term race. I do feel like they're saying they are open to the concept of at least addressing and changing this. If species is something that they're going to use, but they're going to accept feedback on the change in the name, people bringing up things like using ancestry, there may be issues with Pathfinder. I don't think so. Pathfinder can't own ancestry as a term. It just would make them closer, and people might not like that. Subspecies could work. I mean, it's. I feel like when it was sub-race, people could find that problematic, but a subspecies is a scientific term, so that does make sense. ABC, I do think I like ancestry, background, class. That is, yeah. How do you do your character creation? You do your ABCs. You come up with your ancestry, your background, your class. That is actually very smooth, and I actually very much like that. I would suggest that I'm going to suggest that in my playtest feedback, ancestry as a potential change for that. So I like the word lineage. Yeah, lineage is not a bad to describe lineage as what would have been a subrace. So a species, and then you are a that's the lineage within the species. Either way, it is what it is. I think ABC. Oh, in description, ABCD says Nat the Gnome, right? Ancestry, background, class, description. That's actually not bad. I really think ABC is the way to go. But, and by the way, for those of you again watching live or later on YouTube, that I'm conversing with the chat live that's watching this live. But there's one thing that I don't feel like. Well, we need an. Oh my god. All right, you ready? A, B, C, D, E, F. Ancestry, background, class, description, equipment, and feats. That's... Can we keep going? Could we do the whole alphabet? Oh, no. Well, we can't really do gear because we have equipment. But you could do A, B, C, D, E, F, right? That would, in theory, work, right? But the feats come from the background. Either way, we're going to get goals as the G. Guys, we're going to be stuck here forever if we just keep going down this list. The thing that I wanted to address before we move on to this topic, to the actual Unearthed Arcana itself, are habits for H. Oh my god, you guys. The thing I want to talk about is the potential implication this has of just shattering the open game license. Because nobody, I feel like, is thinking about that. Because on paper, it is purely a name change. Here's the problem. The open game license uses the term race. What we have that allows you to create things for 5th edition and publish them under the 5th edition D&D 5e umbrella uses the term race. If 1 D&D and all future iterations of this use the term species, you cannot call your newly created things that would apply to 1 D&D, let's say, or 5th edition, species, because that is terminology utilized by the new edition. Therefore, in theory, making things non-backwards compatible, potentially, but also means if you want to create things in an environment for the version of the game that uses the better, more potentially, politically correct terminology of species, you have to use whatever situation is designed for 1 D&D. You couldn't continue to use the open game license, in theory, because that uses race. And this may be, potentially, a very subtle way to force everybody out of making content for 5th edition where they don't have any specific things, and to force them into using the new terminology. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, I mentioned this in a previous video where I talked about how, like, well, you could make stuff in the old D&D, or you could make stuff in the new hotness, but you have to give us a percentage of it because the only way you're allowed to do it is, say, the DM's Guild. Assuming the DM's Guild sticks around, which I do think it will. But let's use that example, right? Your options are continue to make stuff for 5th edition, or continue to make stuff. You can make stuff using the 1 D&D, 5.5, whatever the specific rules are eventually called. But the only way to publish third-party material at all would be, say, like, let's say on the DM's Guild, where Wizards of the Coast takes 50% of the profit off the top. And those are your options. Continue to make stuff in the old version, or use the new version and give 50% of your profits to Wizards of the Coast. Now, if you, like I said, if you look at it with this new concept of race versus species, it could be like, well, you could continue to use the potentially problematic, old, less sensitive terminology of race, or you could be a good person and use the new updated version term of species, but you have to make it for 1 D&D. That could be a way to sort of corral people in. Now, some of the bigger folks that make a lot of the multi-million-dollar Kickstarters and things may just choose to opt out and go just make their own game system, which is a possibility you could do. Like, take the 5th edition rule set and extrapolate things out and make their own version of Pathfinder, right? Similar to what Paizo did with the 3.5 version. You could do that. But again, they said they're going to support the open game license for the new edition. We don't know what that means. And maybe I'm stirring the pot a little bit here. Maybe this is a little too much tinfoil hat territory. But I did want to address it because I think there may be some hidden agenda there, possibly. I'd like to think there's not, and this is just WotC truly bettering themselves. But if they can better themselves and improve their public image while also helping to force people to give them money in the future and lose potentially less profit, I wouldn't put it past them to not be clever enough to figure that out. All right, let's go back and see what you guys have to say in the chat, and then we'll move on to the actual Unearthed Arcana itself. Let's see. Ancestry would have been the UA. Should have been the UA. Okay, that's more of that. They'll update the OGL until they do and show how open it will be. Why keep worrying about it? Because entire people build their lifestyle and have built their companies on the concept of making products for 5th edition. So if they can't do so anymore, like, let's just say tomorrow, the way you've been living for the past 8 years, somebody else said, hey, you can stop making money or give us half of your money starting tomorrow if you want to keep doing what you've been doing every day. That could potentially be what people are seeing. But either way, I feel for your play group. Their struggle must be real. If everybody who makes races and other stuff can't they say races and it's compatible with newer editions? Yes, they can. I'm just saying, maybe, like I said, maybe I'm over-exaggerating, but there's something to it. The concept of backwards compatibility could possibly be there. So, I mean, again, maybe you could just call it a species, and they can't, like I said, they can't own the term species. It's a thing that exists in the world. It's not something fantastical that they made up, but let's see. God, it's just, like I said, they could update the OGL completely, and we could all be worrying about nothing. And I truly hope that that's what it is. They just make a different version. But if you look back at the game system license that they did for 4th edition, which was drastically different and obviously not well adopted, I don't know. Like I said, I hope that this is all superfluous conversation and they end up just doing the solid and just making a new version of the OGL that follows a similar way and the new system reference document, and it basically takes everything we love about 5th edition and just ports it forward into the open game license for whatever this new edition is ultimately called. But I feel like if they were going to do that outright, they would have just said that. They would have put out a statement that says nothing's changing. It's going to be the exact same thing, just updated for the new rule set. But the fact that they haven't come out and say that, I feel like means that they're going to do something, but it probably won't be the same. How does species work with half elves and half orcs? That's a great question. I guess we'll have to see. So anyway, so either way, folks, that is going to cover my video here talking about the moving on from race in 1D&D blog post from the folks over at Wizards of the Coast. This discussion may come up again. I'm sure it will. Like I said, species does seem like the right terminology, and it probably only seems off to people because race has been the term in the game for just shy of 50 years. Was it species from the start? There probably wouldn't have been any, it may not have been any concern, or if they adjusted it, it's just something new. People are resistant to change. It is what it is. No, they did not cut half orc and half elf out completely. They just said you choose basically the appearance of one, the physical characteristics and appearance of one parental species, and then the attributes of another. So it's not like a standalone thing that provides you a different set of abilities or whatnot. It's just you pick one. What do you look like? If you're a half elf, half tiefling, you could look like a tiefling but have the abilities of the elf or whatever it is. I guess half species, yeah, is an option too. So either way, thank you. Again, reminder, this is just for the folks watching on YouTube, but thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next time. All right, so that's it, folks. We're going to continue on with our review of the Cleric and revised species. So let's go back here. I just want to remind everybody how you find these things. You go to D&D Beyond, you go to Sources, 1D&D Playtest, and then you scroll down to the bottom and choose the option that is Cleric and Revised Species. Now, there is a video that came out from Jeremy Crawford and Todd Kenrick covering it here, but let's go ahead and just dive in. So, it has the Cleric class, which I do feel like is just an overall buff to the Clerics, which is something, like I said, I didn't think we'd ever need to see, but here we are. Revised species, so a revised version of the Ardling, the Dragonborn, and the Goliath, which was a surprise. We knew it was going to be a surprise, which is interesting because the Goliath is one of the species, I think that's had the most updates so far in a variety of different books, from things like it was updated in Monsters of the Multiverse. It showed up in Volos originally. It was updated in Rime of the Frost Maiden, and now it's receiving another update again. And then we do have some rules updates and clarifications. One thing I do like is they did leave us this. What's ahead in the 1D&D playtest? This is actually very nice to see. We talked about it yesterday in the video that they had originally put out, but it gives us kind of a little roadmap, right? It says revised version of every class from the 2014 Player's Handbook. So that's 12. That does not include the Artificer. 48 subclasses, including one in this article. So the thought process is 4 per each class. So again, Clerics had a lot more, as did Wizards, had basically them all tied to the different schools of magic, which it doesn't seem like the schools of magic are changing, so I feel like they are changing the way the Wizards work. So you will not be like an Abjurer or an Evoker. You might be like a Blaster or a Defender or something like that, but we'll see. New and revised spells, new and revised feats, new weapon options for certain classes that seems to be reserved primarily for the warrior group. A new system for creating a home base for your characters. That's pretty cool. It's something that there's been a lot of third-party love for making things like that, so I'm not surprised. Revised encounter building rules, something that is desperately needed in 5th edition, and new and revised monsters. As the playtest progresses, you will also see new versions of some things that were provided in earlier versions, like we're seeing here. I also would love to see some new and revised magic items, but I feel like that's probably bottom of the barrel on the list of things to cover. So, let's see. Did they show up originally with Genasi? I didn't think they showed up. There was maybe they did with that original, like, Elemental Evil Races one. Alright, so, let's see. We know that there's a primary ability associated with all the class groups, which we talked about here, right? The experts get the expertise feature. The mages get the arcane magic, and they're focused on utility and destructions. Priests get divine or primal, focused on healing, utility, and defense, and the warriors are masters of combat who can deal and endure many wounds. It says the highlights in these, Here are the highlights in this series classes. All classes have new features as well as revised versions of old ones. When a class offers a decision, a suggested choice is usually presented, especially at lower levels, and each class's old level 20 feature became their 18. They get a boon at level 20 instead. That is pretty much what we're seeing across the board. Okay. Cleric. Priest group. Primary ability, Wisdom. If you look at this, you can see it is pretty much the same on the grander, like the higher level than what you're used to, right? It's got all the same spell preparing levels, the same number of cantrips. There is a couple of changes, though. Okay. So hit points, still a D8. It's still Wisdom and Charisma saving throws. You still get 2 skills. It tells you Persuasion or Religion, or pick 2 from History, Insight, Medicine, Persuasion, and Religion. So I think that's pretty much the same list. Simple weapon proficiency and light armor, medium armor, and shields. That I think is pretty much exactly like the 5th edition Player's Handbook version. And you get 110 gold pieces worth of starting equipment, or they give you some options here. And then Wisdom is your multi-class if you choose to multi-class, and pretty much that's all the same. So Channel Divinity is now a level 1 class feature. It has 2 options inherently, Divine Spark or Turn Undead. Each time you use your Channel Divinity, you choose which option you want to use, and you get additional uses as you level up. When you use your, additional options for it, you can use it proficiency bonus times per long rest, which is a change. It used to be once per short rest, and then as you leveled up, you would gain access to additional features. It is just starting at level 1, proficiency bonus times per long rest. That will change with some abilities. The save DC is tied to your Wisdom, so it's tied to your spell save DC, same thing. Divine Spark. As a magic action reminder, magic action is the term now we use for casting a spell. You're going to use a magic action to cast a spell. Let's see. You present your holy symbol at a creature you can see within 30 feet and focus divine energy at them. Roll a number of d8s equal to your proficiency bonus. So you're starting off with a minimum of 2 d8s to up to typically a maximum of 6 d8s at higher levels. Roll a number of d8s equals your proficiency bonus, add the rolls together. You either restore hit points to that creature to the total of that you roll, or force them to make a Constitution saving throw. On a failure, they take radiant damage equal to the total, and on a successful save, take half damage. That is actually pretty nice, to be honest with you. It's a nice little feature. It's like a built-in, all clerics now, regardless of what subclass and regardless of what spells you take, have some degree of healing. And it starts out again at level 1 at 2 uses of this to heal 2d8 hit points or deal potentially 2d8 radiant damage to an enemy as a thing you just have out the gate. I like it. Or Turn Undead. And this is beneficial because, as you know, I'm sure if you've played a cleric, if you're not running into undead constantly and you don't have a great use for your Channel Divinity, it just sits there and you never use it. They also adjusted the way Turn Undead works. It says, as a magic action, you present your holy symbol and speak a prayer, censoring undead creatures. Each undead within 30 feet of you makes a wisdom saving throw. On a failure, it is dazed, which is a new condition, for 1 minute or until it takes any damage or you are incapacitated or die. While dazed in this way, the only action it can take is the dash action, and if it moves, it must end that move farther from you than where it started. This is a little bit of a clarification too. Previously, Turn Undead made them run away, and then, or if they couldn't run, they basically were incapacitated. I like this. It basically says they don't have to run, but the only thing they can do, they can just choose to sit there and do nothing. But if they want to take an action, the only action available to them is to dash. And if they do, they have to dash further and be further away from you than they were. Or you could just lock them in place, which is pretty cool. I like that. They come back on a long rest unless you have one of the features we'll talk about here in the future. So spellcasting remains pretty much the way we saw it for the spellcasters in the previous one. You choose from the Divine spell list. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can swap out any of your spells. And the way spell slots work is kind of how we saw it before. Whatever the spell level is what you could prepare. So at level 1, you can prepare 2 first level spells. But say we're at level 9, you prepare 4 first level spells, 3 second level spells, 3 third level spells, 3 fourth level spells, and 1 fifth level spell. The number of spells you can prepare is tied to the number of slots you have of that type. And this might be part of the process of possibly balancing out higher level spell casting by limiting you to, like, again, for the most part, 1 6th or 7th or 8th or even 9th level spell. You can prepare 1. So you're not going to be able to choose to prepare like 3 9th level spells and use whatever one you're able to use that day, whatever is useful. You have 1, make your choice wisely. I will also remind you that the way it stands currently, you can prepare your cantrips, which means also on a long rest, you can swap out your entire cantrip loadout every time you take a long rest, which is a pretty cool thing. All right, and then at 2nd level, you get a new ability, which is called Holy Order. And this is something that's not your subclass. It's just called your specific Holy Order. Are you a Protector? If you choose Protector, you are trained for battle and you get martial weapon proficiency and heavy armor training. If you choose Scholar, you get proficiency in 2 of the following skills: Arcana, History, Nature, Persuasion, and Religion. And whenever you make an ability check using that skill, you get a bonus equal to your Wisdom modifier, which is very interesting and a new kind of thing. So you could choose Arcana, and then it would still add your proficiency bonus and your Intelligence modifier. But if you chose it from the Scholar feature, it also adds your Wisdom modifier to it, which is pretty interesting, and I also very much like that. And then there's also Thaumaturge. Delving deeper into your divine magical abilities, you can prepare 1 extra 0 level spell, so an extra cantrip, from the divine list. In addition, you regain 1 use of your channel divinity whenever you finish a short rest. So there you go, folks. And I really, really like this, because this gives you... it removes a lot of the issue that I had with a lot of existing cleric subclasses. Not all of them, but some of them very much didn't seem to know what they wanted to be. They gave you benefits to martial abilities, and then gave you really good spells, and you were mostly a casting cleric. But then they gave you like weapon proficiency or things that did extra damage. So, also thank you to everybody coming out and saying congrats on the 100K. I really appreciate it. Warren here in the chat says, how many times has a cleric made a religion check and missed it because of the intelligence modifier versus wisdom modifier? So yes, I actually really like this. Also, who said it? Mimersbrand, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, said face cleric. Yeah, it's true. You could be the party face because you have persuasion. You take persuasion from the scholar feature, and it's going to add your charisma modifier plus your proficiency bonus plus your wisdom modifier. So now this gives you the opportunity to be that face character if you'd like, which you never could do before. So you have these options, right? Do you want to be wearing heavy armor and martial weapons? Choose Protector. Do you want to have possibly more skills and possibly even really, if you happen to have a really good, say, intelligence or really good charisma score on top of your good wisdom score, you could be almost as good as an expert in this. And then if you find a way to grab yourself expertise in that, imagine having something like a persuasion check as a cleric with double your proficiency bonus plus your charisma modifier and your wisdom modifier. You could be a better face than a bard, potentially, which is really, really cool. And then I also like that they returned some of the original channel divinity options with Thaumaturge. First of all, right out the gate, just a free extra cantrip. Solid, right? And you can regain a channel divinity whenever you finish a short rest. And that's not limited either. It's whenever you finish a short rest, you get back a channel divinity. That's huge, especially because what we talked about, you can now use a channel divinity to shell out damage or shell out healing. And then every time you take a short rest, you can get 1 use of that back. And reminder, it is proficiency bonus times per long rest. So that's actually really, really solid. And I really like the design of this. And it allows you to have, and this is another one of those funky things where I could play a life domain cleric and you could play a life domain cleric and we could play drastically different with just the Holy Order feature, not even to mention varying subclass options. This is fantastic. This is great customizability. This is, I mean, it's also very powerful. I can't argue with that, but I like it a lot. Then you get your subclass at 3rd level. It does seem, based on this, that I think all subclass choices will be now 3rd level. We saw the Ranger, the Rogue, and the Bard all get 3rd level, but they already did have their subclass choice designed to be 3rd level. The Cleric used to get their domain choice at level 1. You now get your domain choice at level 3. I'm thinking we might see standardization across the board of all subclasses being chosen at level 3. And I think that will make things a little easier. But I saw it come up in the chat a few times, and I'll agree. I don't really see how this can work 100% backwards compatible, but either way. Okay. You get your feat progression is as normal, but now you get a new ability here called Smite Undead at 5th level. You can use your Turn Undead feature that we had up here in a different way. To smite the Undying, whenever you use Turn Undead, you can roll a number of d8s equal to your proficiency bonus and add the rolls together. Each undead that fails its saving throw takes radiant damage equal to the rolls total. This is awesome. And I know people are saying, I dislike smite on clerics. It's not a smite. It's not a smite. Because it's ranged, it hits multiple creatures, and they make a saving throw. So it's not a smite. What this is doing is removing the potentially completely useless concept of destroy undead that you used to get at 5th level. That's what this is doing. Instead of doing, and it's only against undead too, by the way. Smite for paladins, at least the way it worked previously, worked on everything. So it's basically what it is it's just extra damage that you get to do instead of having destroy undead, which was situationally useful at best. This is now just giving you the ability to damage undead, potentially destroying them, right? At 5th level, you have 3d8 radiant damage that you would be able to do with this, which potentially could kill a lower level like skeleton or something that's challenge rating a quarter or whatever it is, which would function the same way, but it also still does damage to higher level enemies as well. Also note that it's only if they fail the saving throw, which destroy undead only worked if they failed the saving throw before. So this doesn't just deal extra damage. It's if they fail the turn undead saving throw, which is awesome because they're now going to take damage and also be dazed at the same time, which I think is pretty cool. The Mech Ninja, we hit 100K last Friday? Thursday? Yeah. Black Friday. Yeah, that's when we hit it. I prefer having the destroyed undead option on top of this. I think I like the new version a lot. Let's see. Rename it to Harm Undead. Just a purely name thing. Change it to Harm Undead as opposed to Smite Undead. I think it's fine. I think it's better than Destroy Undead though, in a lot of ways, because it'll still damage. Like you could hit a vampire whose challenge rating 7 at level 5 with this feature, and Destroy Undead would do literally nothing to them, but this will still do 3d8 damage if they fail the saving throw. The standardized subclass gain built more for multiclass. It might be. All right. Anyway, moving on. Dazed is a strong condition, move or action, nothing else. Yeah, I would prefer another word use. I agree, Cleric should get subclass at level 1. I think it's fine. I know people are saying, like, well, now all of a sudden you just choose your deity, like, which kind of ability. But, like, you could worship a god and not know how you want to worship that god at level 1. But maybe through the course of leveling 2 levels, you figured out you want to worship the life aspect of that deity as opposed to the war aspect. Like, there's options there. And I'm okay with it. I also get the concept of keeping it the way it was, but I really like this Smite Undead feature quite a bit. Well, yeah, they also, somebody brought up in the chat, they could change the word for the paladin smite to something else. I doubt they will, because smite's pretty iconic for the paladin, but it's possible. It also, to somebody else's point, it blocks 1-level dips for multi-class purposes, right? You get a lot if you currently multi-class into Cleric, Sorcerer, or Warlock, because you get so much at level 1. Putting subclasses at level 3 forces a more of an investment in the terms of multi-classing. So I think that might be part of the subtlety to the design as well. We get Blessed Strikes now, a subclass feature at 6, Blessed Strikes at level 7. When a creature takes damage from one of your 0 level spells, so a cantrip, and it's... Oh, hang on. Oh, hold on. When a creature takes damage from one of your 0 level spells or your attacks with weapons, you can also deal 1d8 radiant damage to that creature. Once you deal this damage, you can't deal this damage again until the start of your next turn. Okay, so this replaces kind of the Divine Strike feature or the Potent Cantrips feature. Whenever you damage them with a cantrip or a weapon, you can deal an extra d8 radiant damage to the creature, as opposed to just having that static thing. Here's the thing. It says damage with a 0 level spell. It does not specify a 0 level cleric spell, which means if you have access to something like Firebolt or Shocking Grasp, you could deal an extra d8 radiant damage on top of those, because as long as you're dealing damage with any cantrip, you can choose to apply this, which I really, really like, because this gives you cool options if you get a neat cantrip from, let's say, your species, or from a feat, you can apply this ability to that, which has further synergies, which I also very much like. It is basically the Tasha's option, but which was an option you could choose. For everyone who's not sure what people are referencing in the chat, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything had the option to basically replace either Divine Strike or Potent Cantrips with this ability. They're now making this ability the standard. Thank you, Steve, for the super chat, $10 super chat. I appreciate it. Radiant damage added to your Eldritch Blast. That's also something to consider. Basically, remember, it is only once you deal this damage, you can't use it. So it wouldn't apply to all the Eldritch Blasts, I don't think, based on that. It could apply to one of the blasts, assuming, well, Eldritch Blast may not be a level 0. That's the other thing. Eldritch Blast may not be a level 0 spell. If you're playing in the 1 D&D playtest world, it might be a class feature for the Warlock, but either way. So, Green Flame Blade. Yeah, again, we're in that weird spot where you could do a ton of really crazy stuff with this because we don't have the full rules. So if you're kind of mixing and matching 5e with 1 D&D, you can do some really wonky stuff. It looks like it's worded so that if you hit multiple enemies, you can do extra damage to all of them. Not sure. So when a creature takes damage from a 0 level spell, you can also deal it once you deal this damage. I guess maybe, right? So in theory, if you had something like Acid Splash that could hit 2 enemies, I guess you'd do the d8 radiant damage to both of them. I think it might apply to Eldritch Blast too. It's the instance of how do they work, right? Like if it's something that hits, like it's Acid Splash and it hits 2 targets, I think you read it as it does a d8 damage to both of them. But I also believe Eldritch Blast is supposed to have all 4 blasts happen at the same time. So possibly it would add to that, assuming Eldritch Blast is a 0 level spell. Which, technically, now that I think about it, that could be also a qualifier. Considering if you were to subclass, mix and match this with 5e, cantrips are considered cantrips in 5th edition, not 0 level spells. So if you were to multi-class this with a 5th edition version of the Warlock, it doesn't apply because a cantrip is a cantrip in 5e. A cantrip is a 0 level spell in 1 D&D. I think that's an intentional disclaimer and qualifier there to help out, and I bet you that's on purpose. And yes, it would seem like a Death Domain Cleric would still deal radiant damage. Yeah, does it say that at the start that 0 level spells are also known as cantrips? Because then maybe that's the way to get around it and let it happen. If that's the case, then possibly. We'll see as we scroll through. But I'm wondering if that's part of the terminology choice. Let's see. Oh yeah, it does. You're right here. 3 0 level spells also known as cantrips. All right, so I stand corrected. I thought that was a cheeky way to get around it, but I guess it's self-referential, so you're fine. I was wondering if that was like a way they could tweak that, but no, you guys are all right. I stand corrected. They did reference them in the document itself and other documents to say 0 level spells are considered cantrips, so it's fine. 8th level, you get a feat. This I really like. 9th, you get another Holy Order. So reminder, the Holy Order that you pick at level 2 is martial weapon proficiency, heavy armor training, the extra skills and the boosts to those skills with the wisdom modifier, or thaumaturge, where you get the extra cantrip and 1 channel divinity back on a short rest. You actually get 2. Now, I'd say if you wanted to play like a traditional cleric that's more along the lines of a 5th edition cleric as it stands, you would likely take Protector Protector or Thaumaturge early on, and then you'd take the other one at 9th level. But if you really want to change things up, I really love the concept of the Face Cleric using the Scholar ability. But it's nice that you get to choose 2. Choosing Protector later on would also be interesting, because now all of a sudden at level 9, you can wear heavy armor and use other weapons you couldn't use previously, which is just a funny thing to me to figure that out that much later in the class. But either way, let's see. People are saying about like, how did your Paladin Oath coming online at level 3 make sense? But I thought it was fine. Holy Order is sort of like a fighting style. Yeah, it's kind of like a clerical fighting style. 10th level gets you a subclass feature. At 11th, you now get Divine Intervention, but it functions more or less the same. As an action, describe the assistance you seek. Roll percentile die. If you roll lower than your cleric level, the DM chooses the nature of the intervention. The effect of any divine spell is appropriate. And if it occurs, you can't use it again until 2d6 days pass now. Otherwise, you get it back after a long rest. Feat at 12th level, subclass feature at 14. Feat at 16th level, you get Greater Divine Intervention at 18, which is it automatically works. And if it does, you can't use it again for 2d4 days. A feat at 19th level, and then again, an Epic Boon or another Epic Boon of Fate or an Epic Boon of your choice at 20th level. So, let's see. And then you have your list of spells, which again, they give you here an option for things to prepare the entire way along. By the way, all the ones that have the underlines here have been changed or are referenced in this document, so we'll look at those. And then we have our new subclass here, which is the life domain, which honestly, for the most part, the life domain remained mostly unchanged in a lot of the ways. So you do get domain spells, but you'll notice that because your domain now comes online at 3rd level, you don't get 1st level spells prepared. But these are always prepared for you and don't count against the number of spells you can prepare. And your list for the cleric are Lesser Restoration and Prayer of Healing at 3rd level, Mass Healing Word and Revivify at 5th level, Aura of Life and Death Ward at 7th level, and Greater Restoration and Mass Cure Wounds at 9th level. Obviously, all very healing-based abilities. So that's fine. 3rd level, Disciple of Life. Your healing spells are empowered by life itself. When you cast a spell, when a spell you cast with a spell slot restores hit points to a creature, that creature regains additional hit points on the turn you cast the spell. The additional hit points equals 2 plus the spell's level. So, people are throwing things out there saying about referencing with Goodberry and stuff like that. Yeah, so this is so funny. 6th level, you get Preserve Life. This is similar to what we had before. You can use your Channel Divinity, so we do still have options to use additional Channel Divinities here. As an action, you can expend one of your Channel Divinity options and present your Holy Symbol, restoring a number of hit points equal to 5 times your Cleric level. Choose any creatures within 30 feet of you, so if it's now any creatures, there's no limitation. And divide those hit points among those chosen creatures. It can't bring a creature's hit points above half its hit point maximum. I believe that's mostly similar to how it worked initially. I thought it had a limit on how many creatures you could choose, but maybe it didn't. But yeah, 5 times your Cleric level. It also starts at 30 because you're getting this at 6th level, so there you go. At 10th level, you get Blessed Healer. When you cast a spell with a spell slot on another creature that restores hit points to it, you regain hit points equal to 2 plus the spell's level on the turn you cast the spell. And the 14th level feature is exactly the same as the original Life Cleric. When you would normally roll 1 or more hit dice to restore hit points to a creature with a spell that you cast with a spell slot, don't roll those dice for healing. Instead, use the highest possible amount. For example, instead of rolling 2d6 hit points to heal a creature with a spell, you instead restore 12. The only difference is, if I recall, if we were to go back to D&D Beyond and go look at the existing Life Cleric, I believe Life Cleric, I think this was their last feature, right? So this came online at 17. But look at this. You see preserve life. Let's see. Number of hit points, 5 times your cleric level. Choose. Oh, no, I guess it was. So this works. They remove this. You can't use this feature on any undead or a construct because now there can be undead or construct players. Blessed Healer is still an ability here. We don't have Divine Strike anymore. And yeah, Supreme Healing works the same way. It's just you used to get it at 17th level. You now get it at 14th level, which I kind of like having access to that a little bit earlier. So this is pretty solid. I like the changes here a lot. I think this... I love Clerics in 5th edition a lot. I love this Cleric even more. I think there's a lot of really awesome abilities there. So, okay. Now we're going to roll into the species, right? So this is the Ardling. This is the new version of the Ardling, which I very much enjoy. They changed it to be less celestial and more bestial, and I think that was a solid move, right? Celestial animals roam around the beastlands. Many of those serve the beast lords. An Ardling has a head resembling that of an animal. Depending on the animal, depends on if they have feathers, furs, or scales, whatever. You can see they're humanoid, medium or small size, speed of 30, 200-year lifespan, rather, and they get an animal ancestry. You are descended from a celestial animal. Choose one of the ancestry types below, and it gives you certain things. So are you descended from a climber, for example, a bear, cat, lizard, or squirrel? You have hooked claws, sharp nails, or a serpentine tail. As a result, you have a climb speed equal to your speed. And when you deal damage from your unarmed strike to a target, you can increase the damage to that target by an amount equal to your proficiency bonus. That is very, very solid. And obviously, you could think about being something like an Ardling monk and then have all of your unarmed strikes deal extra damage equal to your proficiency bonus, which is nutty, right? Can you imagine being a level, 2 monk? Again, if you're combining this with 5th edition, you're a 2nd level monk and you could do, 2nd level monk could do 4 attacks, right? That's an extra 8 damage if you hit with all your attacks. Is it once per turn? Oh, it's once per turn. Never mind. Stand by. My mistake. Once per turn. Either way, still cool. Extra damage. My mistake. It's once per turn. I get the other way would be way too strong, so I get it. But either way, that's still strong. And that makes any unarmed strike better. And they have all those new feats that make unarmed strikes better as well. So, I mean, this starts at an extra 2 damage. Goes up to an extra 6 damage at high levels. It's not a lot, but it's a nice little feature on top of the climb speed. I will tell you, though, Climber is not my favorite one. We have Flyer. You have vestigial wings. As a result, when you fall at least 10 feet, you can use your reaction to safely glide downward, taking no damage from the fall. And if you use the new Jump action, you can flap your wings to gain advantage on the action's ability check. That's fine. I don't love the Jump action, personally, but it's okay. I get why they did it, so I'm on board. Racer, deer, dog, horse, or triceratops. I like the reference to a triceratops in there. When you take the dash action, this is actually quite strong. When you take the dash action, your speed increases for that action. It increases to 10 times your proficiency bonus. And it's whenever you take the dash action. So if you have access, if you're like a rogue and have, or a monk or whoever, and you have access to the dash action as a bonus action, and then the dash action as an action, your speed increases for all of those, which is nutty, because you're starting on a level 1 by the 20-foot movement increase, going all the way up to a 60-foot movement increase. And could you imagine having haste and then also having the hasted action, how far you could move on a turn? It would be nuts. That's just crazy. And then probably my favorite, again, you guys recently, if you hadn't heard about Bob the Crocodile from my previous stories, Swimmer is my hands down favorite. Crocodile, dolphin, frog, shark. You can hold your breath for up to an hour at a time, which is useful. You have a swim speed equal to your speed and resistance to cold damage. I think that wins out, in my opinion, for the best one as far as strength goes. Hold breath, swim speed, and cold resistance. I like it a lot. And then you also have divine magic, right? You know a thaumaturgy. Thaumaturgy. And whenever you finish a long rest, you can replace that spell with a different 0-level spell from the divine spell list, and you choose intelligence, wisdom, or charisma for that. Solid, and you have proficiency in the perception skill. Just a great skill all around. So I like it. I definitely like the distinction of it from the very much separating it from the Azamar, which I think is a good thing. And this definitely is a race that I could play. And I also like that you could really get some crazy build craft going. Like the concept of being some super speedy rogue or whatever with the racer option. Or again, I just like the overall strength of the swimmer option, right? Flat out resistance to cold damage is very useful. And then again, remember, it doesn't have to be thaumaturgy. You could swap this for something like Sacred Flame or some other useful ability there, which I like. All right, new version of the Dragonborn. All right, we have pretty much the same at the start here, right? You choose your Draconic ancestry. Here's the options. Now, one of the things that I suggested and many of you suggested from the breath weapon is a change that they actually made. When you take the attack action on your turn, you can replace one of your attacks with an exhalation of magical energy in either a 15-foot cone or a 30-foot line that is 5 feet wide. It's a dexterity saving throw tied to your constitution modifier. It does a d10 damage, right? And then it increases at 5, 11, and 17. And you can do it proficiency bonus times per long rest. The damage is... It's about cantrip level as far as the damage goes, but I do like that I can still, again, if I only have one attack, nothing changes, but if I have multiple attacks, which more often than not, it seems Dragonborn a lot of the time end up, like, the concept here would be like, hey, if I'm a fighter and I have 3 attacks, I could replace one of my 3 attacks with a breath weapon, get a little AoE, get a little elemental damage in there. It's a subtle change, but I like it. And again, you still are proficiency bonus times per long rest, so more uses than you had previously. And again, it's like we said, it's a 30-foot line. That's a pretty substantial AoE, or even a 15-foot cone could go a long way. So I like it. Resistance to the damage that your breath weapon does. Dark vision out to 60 feet, finally. We have that built in. And then Draconic Flight at 5th level, which I also very much like. Right? As a bonus action, you can sprout spectral wings on your back that last for 10 minutes or until you're incapacitated, or you retract them as a bonus action. You have a fly speed equal to your speed. The wings appear to be made of the energy used from your breath weapon. And once you use this trait, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. I like it a lot. I think that's pretty substantial updates, right? Because now I could be a martial character. As a bonus action, I activate my wings. I can now fly. I can fight, swing my weapon, and then also do a breath weapon. I think that's a pretty sizable change. I think it kind of puts it into a more on par power level, I think, compared to what it has been in the past. Well, let's see. Let's see. And they really change it so they have tail... Did they change it so they have tails now? Is that a thing? Did I miss that? I didn't see anything specific referencing tails, but I think that's really your choice at this point. Why does Ardling have keen vision but no dark vision? That's interesting. Our dark vision on the Ardling would be a nice little tweak. I might suggest that in my playtest. But yeah, I do think Ardling's strong. I do think Dark Vision could be a nice little boost to it, but either way. Draconic Flight, yeah, was the Gem Dragons one. You're right. Breath Unlimited, use all right, and then we move into the Goliath, which was the new update, which is also very strong. Okay. 35-foot movement speed on the Goliath, so a little bit more movement speed than normal. And you have the Giant Ancestry feature. All right, you are descended from giants. Choose one of the following benefits. You can use this benefit proficiency bonus times per long rest. If you're a Cloud Giant, you choose one of these, and you have that forever, so pick at the start. Cloud Giant gives you a bonus action teleport for 30 feet. Fire Giant was when you hit a target with an attack roll, you'll deal an extra d10 fire damage to that target. Reminder that it is a D10, so it's a die roll, which means it gets doubled on a crit. Frost's Chill is when you hit a creature with an attack roll, you deal a D6 damage and reduce their speed by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. Hill Giant is when you hit a large or smaller creature with an attack roll and deal damage, you knock them prone. It is an attack roll, mind you. No, nothing here about potentially spell attacks, but an attack roll, although that may be clarified a little bit. And then they're knocked prone, no save. Stone's Endurance is the traditional Goliath route, right? You use your reaction, roll a d12, add your Constitution modifier to that roll, and reduce the damage you take by that. And Storm's Thunder, when you take damage from a creature within 60 feet, you can use your reaction to deal a d8 thunder damage to that creature. Then you also have Large Form, right? You get this at 5th level. As a bonus action, you change yourself to large size. The transformation lasts for 10 minutes or until you end it as a bonus action. During the duration, you have advantage on strength checks. Your speed increases by 10 feet. That's once per long rest. And then you also have Powerful Build. You have advantage on strength saving throw to end the grappled condition on yourself. And you count as one size category larger when it comes to push, drag, or lift. It's similar to the Rune Knights. It also takes a lot that was in that one Unearthed Arcana about giant options. It basically pulled a lot of that options. I think it was a feat originally and kind of plopped them into this version of the Goliath. And then we roll into the new feats, okay? There's not much. They just list the ability score improvement feat here because it was referenced in the Cleric. And then we have 2 new epic boons. We have the epic boon of Fate, which is required 20th level and the Mage or Priest group. When another creature that you can see within 60 feet of you makes a d20 test, you can roll a d10 and apply the number rolled as a bonus or penalty to that roll. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it until you roll initiative or finish a short or long rest. And then epic boon of Spell Recall at 20th level for the Mage or Priest group. When you cast a spell, you can cast a spell you have prepared without expending a spell slot, provided it's 5th level or lower. Once you do so, you can't do it again until you finish a long rest. Or epic boon of Truesight, which is only available for the Priest group, gives you Truesight out to 60 feet. Those are solid feats. I mean, I really like the boon of Fate. Felt more akin to something like a bard, personally. But either way, I think it's fine. And the epic boon of Spell Recall is very powerful. And then the Truesight one as well, just flat out Truesight all the time. Very nice. All right, and then rules glossary. So it says, here's a list of things that have changed. The aid spell, the attack action, equipping weapon section, the banishment spell, the grappled condition, the guidance spell, the influence action, the light weapon property, long rest, the magic action, the prayer of healing spell, the equipment included in the priest's pack, the resistance spell, the spiritual weapon spell, and Truesight. So, we're going to focus primarily on those. So first off, we go to the aid spell. It is now a 2nd level abjuration spell. It is an action, range of 30 feet, instantaneous. Your spell bolsters creatures, filling them with resolve. Choose up to 6 creatures within range. Each target gets 5 temporary hit points. When you cast this spell with a 3rd level spell or higher, the number of temporary hit points increases by 5 for each slot above 2nd level. So this is a change, right? Aid used to increase your maximum hit points by 5 and your current hit points by 5 for 8 hours. Now it's just giving you and 6 other creatures 5 temporary hit points. And then the temporary hit point increase goes up by 5. Well, again, I will say, people, previously, instead of it taking 8 hours, it was your actual hit point maximum, which meant you could be healed up to that amount after the fact. So, like, if you had 50 hit points and someone cast 8 on you and it gave you 55 hit points and you took damage, you could be healed back up to that 55 for that 8-hour period. I don't mind this, but I think it should be a bonus action. Would be my only change. I'm okay with the change to being temporary hit points. If you made it a bonus action, that might be too strong for a bonus action spell. But that would be the only potential change I would make. Other than that, I'm fine with it. Yeah, 30 HP to 30 temporary HP around. 6 people. I think it was only like, was it like 3 before? Let's go look up aid. Yeah, it was up to 3 creatures before. So now it went from 3 creatures giving 5 hit points and maximum hit point increase to 6 creatures with temporary hit points. I like it. I mean, maybe it is too strong for a bonus action. The new aid's pretty good. It's basically, from what I'm seeing in the chat right now, pretty mixed. So, biggest nerf is you can't bring a downed player up with aid. I guess you probably could have, right? Before, because it increased their hit points by 5. So I guess in theory, I never thought about using it like that, but I guess that would work. New aid doesn't work with Armor of Agathis. That is true because it's temporary hit points. Well, no, there's no max duration for the 5 temporary hit points, but when temporary hit points are expended, they're gone. And they reset, I think, on a long rest. So if you had 5 temporary hit points, you'd have them all day if you took no damage. But when you get a long rest, your temporary hit points reset. And if you lose them, you can't get them back unless you cast the spell again, which was the difference between the original aid. Okay, let's move on. Arcane spell, this just gives us the whole list. Armor training, artisan tools, attack action. So they updated this equipping weapon section. It says you can equip or unequip one weapon before or after each attack you make as part of this action, even if that attack is with an unarmed strike. Okay, that's just a little bit of quality of life stuff, right? So I can attack and then unequip, like equip a weapon, yeah, and attack, and I've got it, or I can attack and unequip. Okay, just a little bit of quality of life stuff there. All right. Banishment spell. I think this was updated too, right? Let's see. Concentration up to a minute. You attempt to send one creature that you can see within range to another plane of existence. The target must succeed on a charisma saving throw or be transported to a harmless demi-plane for the duration. The target can willingly fail to save. While in the demi-plane, they are incapacitated. At the end of each of their turns, they can repeat the saving throw, ending the spell in a success. When the spell ends on a target, it reappears in the space it left or in the nearest unoccupied space if that space is occupied. If the spell lasts on the target for 1 minute and the target is an aberration, celestial, elemental, fey, or fiend, the target doesn't return, is instead transported to a random location on a plane associated with its creature type. When you cast this with 5th level or higher, you can target 1 additional slot. What was the difference between it and the original banishment? Because they didn't get to make the save every turn? Was that what it was? I just don't remember. I don't use banishment very often. Okay. Okay, still concentration for a minute. You attempt to send one creature, they must make a charisma saving throw. If the target is native to the plane of existence you're on, they're banished to a harmless demi-plane. While they're incapacitated. It remains there until the spell ends, at which point it reappears. If the target is native to a different plane, if the spell ends before the minute is passed. Yeah, so I guess the difference is it gets the saving throw now. Is that what it is? They can choose to willingly fail. At the end of each of its turns, it can repeat the saving throw. Yeah. When the spell ends on a target, it reappears. So I guess that's the difference, right? When it's in the demi-plane, it's incapacitated. Yeah. So, range is now, what is it, touch before? 30 feet? Oh, range was 60 feet before, it's 30 feet now. Does it have, yeah, it doesn't have no changes really in the requirements as far as material components. So they have the range, and now you can make the save at the end of each of your turns to stay there. Yeah, failing a save on purpose isn't allowed unless the DM says so. Yeah, so this allows you to do that. The range nerf may have been too much. People are saying all banishment doesn't specify creature types. Does it say... Oh, did it say that? It sends one creature to a range. So that's the case. It's just where they end up going. It says if they are an aberration, celestial, elemental, fey, or fiend, they go to their plane associated with their creature type. And it just says here, if they're native to a different plane of existence than the one you're on, they are banished to their home plane. I see. So it puts them in the demi-plane no matter what. And then if it lasts the full round. Okay, so it is a general kind of nerf, I would say, in some aspects, although banishment was very strong in 5th edition. Yeah, the biggest change I'd say out of all of this is the change to making the saving throw every turn. For the most part, some of these other ones are kind of situational. But the save every turn. And I will say that, so it was very powerful before, but if you've ever been on the receiving end of a banishment spell, that's even worse. Like as a player, like a monster casts banishment on you, or, you know, and then you're basically out of the fight for the rest of the fight and you can't do anything unless the party can knock them around and have them fail their concentration check. So... people are saying they need to put it back to 60-foot range and put incapacitated back, or else it's weaker hypnotic pattern. It says while they're in the plane, they're incapacitated. So that's the same, right? It doesn't. There's no incapacitation when they come back. Target remains there until the spell ends, at which point it reappears in the space it left. So yeah, it's just more saving throws. Okay, here's the bark skin spell that was updated before. We talked about that. We're gonna move on. Okay, difficult terrain, divine spells, exhausted condition, expertise, fly speed, gaming set, grappled. They said they changed. While grappled, you experience the following effects. Your speed is 0 and can't change. You have disadvantage on attack rolls against any target other than the grappler. The grappler can drag or carry you when it moves, but the grappler suffers the slowed condition while moving unless you are tiny or 2 sizes smaller. While grappled, you can make a dexterity or strength saving throw against the grapple's escape DC at the end of each of your turns, ending the condition on yourself on a success. The condition also ends if the grappler is incapacitated or if something removes you from the grapple's range. So I don't really notice, I don't remember what they had changed in the last one, but is it that the fact that you get to make the save at the end of your turns regardless? Useless versus other spells now. Yeah. Barkskin's chained to a bonus action. Did they change that from the last Unearthed Arcana? Let's see. That's the problem of flipping between the two. I would love it if we had like a playtest change log that told us what they changed exactly, as opposed to me having to do this. Or just having like a highlight, like this changed. Sorry, watch your eyes. We're scrolling ahead. Okay. Go back. Well, I might as well do this because we should have it both open. So Barkskin was a bonus action. And so it was that. Concentration up to an hour. Still that. Temporary hit points equal to your spellcasting ability modifier. Okay. Well, let's check the grappled condition to see what the difference is. Disadvantage on attack rolls. The grappler can drag or carry you and is slowed. Make strength DC at the grapplers escape the end of each of your turns. The condition also ends if they're incapacitated or if something moves you outside of the grappler's range without using your speed. Did they change this? Is that what changed? Also ends if the grappler's incapacitated or something removes. I guess that's it. The condition also ends if the grappler is incapacitated or if something moves you outside the grapple's range without using your speed. And now it says if something removes you from the grapple's range. So it doesn't have the specification of without using your speed. So I guess that's the only difference there between that. Okay, guidance. Reaction when you take... Reaction which you take in response to you or an ally within 10 feet of you failing an ability check. range 10 feet. You channel magic insight into the creature that failed the ability check. That creature can roll a d4 and add the number rolled to the check, potentially turning it into a success. So they did change it. Previously, it was 30 feet range. Now it's 10 feet. But it was limited to, it was the creature, you would add the d4 to the number rolled, but once they succeeded, or once they benefited from the spell, they couldn't benefit from it again. Now it is reaction to a creature failing an ability check within 10 feet of you. But when they fail, so it's a middle ground, right? It works similar to the old guidance in that it doesn't have a limitation now. But they can add a d4 to that check, potentially turning it into a success. They just cut the range down. I like it. I was originally going to say keep it the old way, and then, like, it's not expended if they didn't succeed. But I like this. They just cut the range down and made it like a permanent thing. And I think that's a good fix. Oh, hang on. Pauper Knight. Let's see. Let me go back. Sorry, we missed something. Wait, what are you referencing? Said something about repelling blast, banishment. Okay. Oh, new incapacitated includes the ability to speak. It does, yeah. Yeah, the new guidance is a reaction. I like the new guidance. I like the updated rules to that. I think it's fine. Benefit multiple times per long rest. That's true. It is much better as a reaction. I agree. I think I like it all around. Guidance still had a range of 10 feet, I think, or a range of touch previously. So, all right, Heroic Inspiration sticks around. They said they changed the influence action, I believe, at the start of this section. Okay. Can be used only on creatures controlled by the DM. It isn't mind control. Can't force a creature. Different default attitude. Hey, this is going to be complicated. I'm going to have to pull this up on the other window. Do a quick side by side. Because this is a lot to just have to go through all the time. So let's see. Okay, it contains 3 parts: attitude, interaction, and charisma check. Let's see. A successful charisma check is usually necessary when the adventurers try to influence an indifferent creature. A friendly creature wants to help the adventurers and wishes to help them. Often help happily, with the charisma check succeeding automatically. If an element of personal risk is involved, a successful charisma check is usually required to convince a friendly creature to take that risk. That's what was changed. They added this bit here. Friendly creatures often help happily, with the charisma check succeeding automatically. That was not there. They just had that. It says they often help happily, and here it says that they automatically succeed. So that's something that was added. You know how hard would it have been to just, like, make this like a track change document and, like, highlight this in red so we knew exactly what was changed instead of having to flip between the 2 documents? Okay, hostile adventurers need to succeed on 1 or more challenging charisma checks. The DM might determine that the hostile creature is so ill-disposed. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. That looks to be the same. Interaction. Take the influence action, either role-playing how your character interacts. If the interaction is especially suited to the creature's desires and outlook, the DM might temporarily shift a hostile creature to indifferent, or an indifferent creature to friendly. Okay, that's pretty much the same. Similarly, if the interaction is particularly irksome to the creature, different to hostile. Okay, so that looks to be largely the same. Yeah, a revision log would be such a nice thing. It's not that hard. Like, I'm sure they have that internally, a track change document. You know? Let's see. Okay, let's keep going. Ability check. Maybe that's where the difference is. Okay. Ability check. Oh, that's the difference. That's the big one. Okay. This is all broken up a little nicer here. It says ability check to determine. Originally, you make a charisma check, animal handling, deception, intimidation, or persuasion. The applicable skill depends on the interaction. Here, it has a little bit more giving us information here, right? It says the influence skills tables suggests which skills are applicable. Animal handling, gently coaxing a beast or monstrosity. Deception, deceiving a creature that can understand you. Intimidation, intimidating a creature. Persuasion, persuading a creature that can understand you. And then it also, this setting the DC bit is not in there. Yeah. The minimum DC for the check is 15 for or the creature's intelligence score, which is ever higher. Outcome: if your check succeeds, the creature does as asked. If the check fails, you must wait to make the same request again. The default wait time is 24 hours. Okay, so they used to have individual responses for the different creatures for a DC 10 and a DC 20 based on if they were hostile, friendly, or indifferent. They cut that entirely. They gave us this table, and they basically gave us this DC bit and then the outcome bit. That's new. Okay. So it was worth pulling up the other table because we need to see what's different. The only problem is now I need to know what was... Go back to the start to see what else they talked about. I'm going to write this down real quick. Sorry, folks. Okay, so we went through aid, attack, banishment, grappled, guidance, and influence. So we've got the light weapon property, long rest, magic action, prayer of healing, priest's pack, resistance, spiritual weapon, and truesight. All right, well, at least we know what we're looking at. This is the newest Unearthed Arcana that just came out for the Cleric and a few other things. It works more or less the same as it did before, the updates to guidance. I just like its reaction now. I think it's much better. I think I have no complaints about the new... I didn't know where they were going to go. Keep the guidance as it is in this document. I'm good with it the whole way through. All right. So next up was the light weapon property. Now that got a big change. Let's see what adjusted there. When you take the attack action on your turn and attack with a light weapon in one hand and have a light weapon in the other hand, you can make one extra attack as part of the same action. The extra attack must be made with a light weapon in the other hand, and you don't add your... Oh, there it is. And you don't add your... No, that's the same. And you don't add your ability modifier to the extra attack's damage. You can make this extra attack only once on each of your turns. For example, if you take the attack action on your turn and have a short sword in one hand and a dagger in the other, each of which has the light property, you can make one attack with each weapon, but you don't add your strength or dexterity modifier to the second one. I don't know what they changed. You can make an extra attack. Part of the extra attack must be made with a different light weapon in the other hand. Oh, it did say... It's just like... I think it's just like clearing it up. Take the attack action on your turn. You attack with a light weapon in one hand and can make one extra attack as part of the same action. Oh, I guess it just says that extra attack must be made with a different light weapon in the other hand, and you don't add your ability. So I think they just cleaned up the wording. I don't see any actual fundamental difference in what was changed. No, it wasn't a bonus action in the last Unearthed Arcana either. I'm referring to... They changed this in this Unearthed Arcana compared to the previous one, where it was not a bonus action in the last Unearthed Arcana either. This is why I'm complaining about this changelog document. The things that I took that list from were things that were changed from the last document as well. They updated the light weapon property in the expert classes one, but it was just shifted the language here. And I'm like looking for some major change, and it looks like they just cleaned up the wording. No, the once per turn part was there too. Okay, folks, you correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to put this on the screen. You can see it right here. And I'm going to read verbatim the old wording, and you tell me what you see as the difference, okay? When you take the attack action on your turn and attack with a light weapon in one hand, you can make one extra attack as part of the same action. That extra attack must be made with a different light weapon in the other hand, and you don't add your ability modifier to the extra attack's damage. You can make this extra attack only once on each of your turns. For example, if you take the attack action on your turn and have a short sword in one hand and a dagger in the other, each of which has the light property, you can make one attack with each weapon, but you don't add your strength or dexterity modifier to the damage roll of the second weapon. It seems to be basically exactly the same. It's just they restructured the wording of the first sentence to be cleaner to read. But that's the problem. I'm looking intently for some major change, and it's just a grammatical adjustment. And that's why a changelog document would be huge. Okay, long rest. This is another one that I'm anticipating a minor change, but I could be wrong. Okay, long rest is an extended period of downtime, at least 8 hours, available to any creature. During a long rest, you must sleep for 6 and perform no more than 2 hours of light activity, such as reading, talking, eating, or standing watch. Benefits. You regain all lost hit points. You regain all spent hit die. If your hit point maximum was reduced, it returns to normal. Ability scores restored. If an ability score were reduced, they return to normal. This is what they added. Exhaustion reduced. If you are exhausted, your level of exhaustion decreases by 1. Oh, hang on. After you finish a long rest, you must waste at least 16 hours before starting another one. It used to be 24 hours. So, that is a phenomenal change. It used to say you can't benefit from more than one long rest in a 24-hour period and must have at least 1 hit point at the start of the rest to gain its benefits. It now says after you finish a long rest, you must waste at least 16 hours. It still has this bit here about having the 1 hit point, but 16 hours to start a second long rest as opposed to 24. That's a big change. So now you can sleep twice a day, essentially, instead of having to stay up. Let's see if there's anything else, right? Interrupting the long rest. They gave us some qualifiers here. These were not here before. A long rest is stopped by the following interruptions. Combat, casting a spell other than a 0-level spell, or 1 hour of walking or physical exertion. So you can cast cantrips as much as you want as long as it's not engaging in combat and it doesn't interrupt your long rest. If the rest was at least 1 hour long, you get the benefit of a short rest. That means the same. Okay. Yeah, if you're an elf, this is fantastic news. You're not kidding. This is awesome. I actually just ran into this in the Great Modron March campaign that we played last time. I had taken a long rest, and I had to wait over 24 to take another one, whereas I could have waited 16 if we were playing with the new rules. The benefit is previously you still had to... If I took a long rest and ended my 8 hours of long rest, I needed to then wait a full 24 hours later to even start the secondary long rest. Now I can wait 16 and take it again. Correct, yeah. Did they change that too? Oh, you can resume your long rest immediately after an interruption. If you do so, it only requires 1 additional hour to finish. That's huge! Thank you. Who pointed that out? Who said that? Somebody said that, and I really appreciate you calling me out on that. The Chad Plays. Thank you. That's a big change. So, yeah, and it also, it doesn't state how long your rest needs to be interrupted for. But yeah, you can resume a long rest immediately after an interruption. So if you are in the middle of a long rest, say it lasts an hour, you get the benefits of a short rest, and then a combat ensues, you can end the combat and then immediately resume your long rest by only adding 1 additional hour. That's huge. That is such a nice quality of life change. So good. Well done, Wizards. I got to give you credit for that. That's great. Yeah, I think that's really good. So that's really, really good. I think everybody seems to be on. And yeah, you can cast cantrips. So, right, if you were reading a book or like doing research, let's say, You could cast guidance if you failed your like intelligence check while trying to recall history or whatever, and casting guidance doesn't interrupt your long rest, which is cool. But yeah. So, mold earth, create bonfire, light. Yeah, all are really good. Like a lot of fun, useful cantrips. Prestidigitation. A lot of fun things you can do during a long rest now without having to kind of be interrupted there. If you start a long rest at midnight and finish it at 8 a.m., you can't finish another long rest for 24 hours, which means you can't finish it until 8 a.m., but you can still start it at midnight. Exactly. Yeah. They clarify how long the interruption can be. If you're interrupted for 5 hours, yeah, that's the other thing. They don't tell you. They don't clarify that. So yeah, to that point, right? If you are interrupted for 5 hours, can you go back to the same long rest? I guess in theory, if you go back immediately, yes, and it only adds 1 hour to finish the rest. But if you started a long rest and it was 3 hours in and then you were interrupted for 5 hours, you're going to need another 6 hours after that, I guess, is how that would work. So you have 6 hours of long rest, start doing a dungeon, then take 3 hours and finish. I mean, it's not starting it's 1 hour of walking or combat. I don't think they're like trying to make it so that you can game it by like starting a long rest and then like getting into a dungeon and then finishing it. But I'm sure people will try to cheese that for sure. Is it a change for those with trance? I imagine that everything, we would look at the elf changes that were in the character origins, which is you can complete a long rest in 4 hours. So everything that just applies to all of this, right? If your long rest of 4 hour trance gets interrupted, and you got an hour in, you get the short rest. So stuff like that. Is it 1 hour per interruption? Yeah, so a better language would be 1 additional hour per hour of interruption, minimum 1. That would be a cleaner wording, and I would say suggest that in your survey. The only vaguity is a casting a spell during combat wouldn't be 2 interruptions. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, long rest ambushes are no longer completely debilitating for parties, which is good. Agreed. 100%. I would have been in a great scenario when the situation that I was in was very interesting because my long rest only took 4 hours as an elf. I completed my long rest and then went and got into a combat. Had it been an interruption during it, it actually would have been more beneficial to me in the long run, rather. So yeah. You can't stop an already stopped long rest by casting a spell during combat, though. Yeah, so it was already interrupted. All right, let's move on. Magic. Oops. Magic was one of the things that was changed. It says when you take the magic action, you cast a spell that has a casting time of an action, or use a feature or magic item that requires the magic action to be activated. That seems to be the change. It says, or you use a feature that wasn't in here before, or you use a feature or a magic item, because I believe it said some of the I think one of the races possibly had I think the Dragonborn, it was like a magic action to activate your wings or something. All right, or if you cast a spell that has a casting time of 1 minute or longer, you must take the magic action on each turn of that casting, and you must maintain concentration while you do so. If your concentration is broken, the spell fails, but you don't expend the spell slot. Oh, it was Channel Divinity. Thank you. It was Channel Divinity. That's what it was. That's this part right here. This is the only thing added, or you use a feature. So, okay. Simple change. All right, next up. And that just means it covers... I wonder if with a future version of Dispel Magic or Counterspell, we'll have something to reference the magic action. So, like, in an area of anti-magic, or you could, stuff like that to affect things like a Channel Divinity. Prayer of Healing. All right, well, let's go back here, and we'll pull up, because we have to keep doing this. Prayer of Healing. We'll have that up here on the other side so that we can flip back to it. 10 minutes, range of 30 feet. You utter an extended prayer of restoration. Choose a number of willing creatures equal to your spellcasting ability modifier, minimum of 1. Each of those creatures who remains within the spell's range of 30 feet for the entire casting gains the benefits of a short rest and also gains 2d8 hit points. And a creature Whoa. What? 10-minute short rest? Oh, okay. Each creature who remains in the range of the spell's entire casting gains a benefit of a short rest and 2d8 hit points, and they can't be affected by this spell again until that creature finishes a long rest. And then for each spell slot of 3rd level or higher, it increases the healing. Whereas previously, it was up to 6 creatures get 2d8 hit points plus your spellcasting ability modifier. Wow, that's huge. Oh, and it shifted too. It was evocation originally, and now it's an abjuration spell. That's... Oh, and it because it's a benefit of a short rest, you can expend hit dice and heal yourself. Wow, that's so good. I never took Prayer of Healing before because of the 10-minute casting time. This is huge. Talk about, you could have a spell to reset a Warlock spell slots in 10 minutes. Like, this is crazy. Wow. That's pretty good. It's a short rest for up to 3 people. It's extra healing. It's a short, I mean, and I know people will say, and I saw it in the chat already, and I'll agree, that more often than not, if you have 10 minutes, you have an hour. It's a thing I've said often in the terms of Dungeons and Dragons, right? More often than not, if you have the equivalency of 10 minutes in D&D, you can typically have an hour as far as, like, most things go. However, I have been in situations where, like, there was a countdown timer or there was something, and, like, 10 minutes, we could take 10 minutes, but we couldn't take an hour. So it's possible, and I think this is an all-around shift that will make this spell something utilized a lot more by a lot more people. It's just better catnap, really. That's how I feel about it. Yeah, and people had suggested that, yeah, if you look, some of these have shifted. Produce Flame is now an evocation spell. Cure Wounds is abjuration. Healing Word is abjuration. It looks like most of the healing spells are abjuration now. Priest's Pack, they just changed kind of what was in it. It costs 33 gold pieces, and that's what it includes. Flaming Spheres, Evocation used to be Conjuration, Stonekin, Transmutation, so on. Okay, next up was the Priest Pack. We did that. Resistance, the cantrip. Let's go get that. That's not how you spell resistance, Ted. Resistance. All right, resistance. Okay, another cantrip that I barely ever took. Reaction, which you take to in response to an ally within 10 feet of you failing a saving throw. Oh, it's just like guidance, but on a fail. It's just like guidance for saving throws. Previously, it was concentration for a minute, and you touch a willing creature, and they add a d4 to their saving throws. This is so much better. This is so much better. This is a spell I would take now. This is fantastic. All around, solid change. Skippy, I bet you're right. I bet you True Strike will become this, but for attack rolls. And that would actually make it so much more useful. Wow. They have to do that, right? They can't not do that. That fixes True Strike. A reaction to when a creature within 10 feet of you misses an attack roll, add a d4 to the attack roll, possibly turning a miss into a success. So good. Such a simple, clean change. Wow, that's so... Oh, my God. It's just so good. I hope that's what they do for True Strike. It has to be. It has to be. And if it's not, do that in your game, because that's what it should be. So pumped for that. Oh, my God. What a good fucking spell. This is... Yeah. Okay. Good stuff, folks. This is really good. All right, now they did change spiritual weapon, and I heard it was a nerf, so let's look. Bonus action, concentration. There it is. Range of 60 feet. The force appears within range, and you can immediately make one melee attack against a creature within 5 feet of you, 5 feet of the force. On a hit, the target takes force damage equal to a d8 plus your spellcasting ability modifier. As a bonus action on your later turns, you can move the force up to 10 feet and have it attack a creature within 5 feet. And then, let's see. That all appears to be the same. Force damage, 20 feet. When you cast a spell using a spell slot of 3rd level or higher, the damage increases by a d8 for every 2 slot levels above 2nd. For every slot level above 2nd. So they gave it better damage, but they made it a concentration spell. We can try to make suggestions in this. I'm going to make the suggestion in here when I talk about the resistance spell when I do the survey. I'm going to suggest, I love what you've done with this. Please make True Strike similar to this. So that's the trade-off, right? You can now, the damage is now a d8 for every slot above 2nd, but it's a concentration spell. Now, normally I think this qualifies as a nerf, right? Because this was a cool thing that a cleric could do. You'd have your singular attack, and then you'd have a bonus action attack you could do every turn with your spiritual weapon on top of whatever you would cast. Realistically, the best move, and I'll stand by this till the day I die, was cast Spirit Guardians on yourself, cast Spiritual Weapon, and then you still have your action to attack, cast another spell while you're churning people up with your Spirit Guardian damage and swinging with your Spiritual Weapon. It's an awesome feeling, let me tell you. I love that. That is pretty solid. I like that a lot. But I'm wondering, well, we did have some additional options. So, like, normally I would say that Spiritual Weapon was kind of a way to offset the fact that as a cleric you only had one attack. But they did give us some other stuff, like the option to do just extra radiant damage with our Channel Divinity. They did give us the options for the damage from, what's it called? Brain fart. From the Smite Undead. And reminder that more than likely Paladin will now have access to Spiritual Weapon, which is pretty cool. Because even if it is concentration as a Paladin, you probably won't lose that because of your boosts with auras, assuming they still have that. Either way. It was annoying that you'd see every cleric with Spiritual Weapon and Spirit Guardians. Yeah, it's the GOAT. That's the move, man. That's what you do. But now you're gonna have to make that choice: Spiritual Weapon or Spirit Guardians. If Spirit Guardians remains the same, I think Spirit Guardians wins until, well, like, Spiritual Weapon's what you choose until you can take Spirit Guardians, right? That's how I would say it. A Flaming Sphere's concentration. This should be 2. Yeah, I guess it is kind of a similar thing to Flaming Sphere. What if Spiritual Weapon became a class feature? It could. Let's see. Spiritual Weapon could have pretty easily been outrun. Let's see. Just wanted to say thanks for the live stream. No, thank you, Justin. Paladins are probably going to get Spiritual Weapon too because of how spell lists work. Yeah, seems to be the case. You can also you can dual wield in Spiritual Weapon now. That's true, right? With the change to the light weapon feature, so you can do that, and then 2 weapons, and then have Spiritual Weapon also work, which is nice. Paladins can be limited to abjuration spells, divine spells. It's possible, right? That they may limit it like they did with someone like the Bard and things. Let's see. It's not a choice if there's a better option. Fair. No concentration was too powerful. The fact that it scales makes it okay. Spirit Guardians needs a nerf. No, don't touch my Spirit Guardians. It's my favorite spell. Yeah, I get it. They might, but I don't want them to change it. It's my favorite spell. I always had long rests start over, by the way, if they got interrupted. Let's see. Okay. And then lastly was truesight got changed. Let's see. How did it change from the last one? True sight. No. Okay, so it wasn't changed. A creature with true sight has enhanced vision within a specified range. Within that range, they have the following: they can see in darkness and magical and normal darkness. They can see invisible creatures and objects. They notice visual illusions and automatically succeed on saving throws against them. The creature discerns the true form of any creature or object it sees that has been transformed by magic, and they can see into the ethereal plane. All right, let's go look up true sight and see what it used to do, because I don't know if it had the original form aspect. If I click on one of these, will it just take me? Can I click on true sight? Where the hell is it? Boons. Boon of true sight. Gets you true sight. Okay, here we go. A monster with true sight can, out to a specific range, see in normal and magical darkness, see invisible creatures and objects, automatically detect visual illusions and succeed on saving throws against them, and perceive the original form of a shape changer or creature that is transformed by magic. So I don't think that's actually much of a change, to be honest. Visible creatures and objects. Succeed saving throws. Yeah, I guess it's the same. I guess they just put it in here for the first time and clarified it. Because I don't see much difference there. It's funny how small things can get me hyped. Reaction resistance makes me so happy. Yeah, it's so good. I love reaction resistance. That's awesome. Paladin can cast only spells out of combat. Oh, we're talking about AD&D. A little more explicit and magical darkness. I think it said magical darkness, right? Didn't it say that? Yeah, normal and magical. Either way. So that's it. So there you go. Yeah, I think it is primarily just the formatting, which is fine. I'm okay. I'm on board for formatting changes. Oh, it doesn't include the dazed condition, which I guess, which is true, which is kind of funny. So it might be dazed is only specifically referenced in that ability, which is possible. Dazed may not be a new standalone condition in and of itself. Dazed may be a function purely of... Oh, no, it's right here. I missed it. Bloop, bloop, bloop. I skipped it because it wasn't listed on the list of things that was new. When dazed, you can move or take an action on your turn, but not both. You also can't take a bonus action or a reaction. Okay, but the Cleric's dazed ability is different. You can't take an action. You can only take the move action. So that's the difference there. Yeah. Limited activity. Move or take an action. This kind of is like what was this the original slow effect, right? You could move or take an action. Something similar to that. Okay, so I guess we'll see more things. You know what? I bet you Dazed exists now because of what we're going to be getting with the warrior classes. I bet you like one of their weapon interactions is going to be a dazed condition where you like clock somebody with a bludgeoning weapon and it dazes them. I bet you that's why it's here. Yep. Did it not say shape changer? Oh, it does say original form of a shape changer. Did the true sight not include that? Let's go and see. Man, this is a long... True form of any creature, not just a shape changer. So, okay. So that's part of it, I guess, the change. Pommel strike from Baldur's Gate 3. Exactly what I'm thinking, right? So I bet you dazed is a new condition so that, yes, somebody can either hit with the pommel or clock with a melee weapon. It might be tied to a specific weapon type, the dazed condition, or however that works. But so they don't have stunned as a condition, right? Listed. So as it stands right now, stunned still exists in the from the 2014 Player's Handbook, but we now have the slowed condition. We also now have the dazed condition. We have the updated change to the incapacitated condition. We have the updated changes to the exhausted condition. So it does appear that we're going through and making some changes to things. Yeah, let's go back to you guys. So some of you are saying in the chat here, right, dazed strike instead of stunning strike. That might be what it is, right? If they remove stun to possibly mitigate some of the. So again, I've played monks. I've ran games for monks. Monks can either really be not very powerful at all or completely ruin a DM's combat, depending on what kind of player you have and how well they use their key points. Stunning Strike can absolutely shut down a combat. I've played 2 monks to level 16. The first time I never used Stunning Strike once. I think I tried to use it one time early on and it didn't work, so I never used it again. The second game, I used Stunning Strike all the time, and I shut down combats left and right by doing that. So Dazing Strike might be how they go about it, which is, still impactful, right? Saying you can either move or take an action on your turn, but not both, and no bonus actions or reactions. That fundamentally changes things, but it doesn't completely cripple a combat. So that might be something like that. I can't say that they might still give monks Stunning Strike, but I do feel like Dazed's appearance is because the warrior classes will have some form of weapon interaction that allows them to do that. And a reminder that the monk is a warrior class, so perhaps it'll be like that's a thing you could do with maybe perhaps all bludgeoning weapons will have the option for Dazing Strike, and they can like knock you with it, and that's a thing that all warriors can do now. I don't know. We don't know yet, but I bet you I don't think its appearance is... Daze is a very common term that's used in a lot of games and RPGs and things that people do when they hit with like a bludgeoning weapon. They do some sort of apply a daze effect or daze the enemy or something like that. So I think that's why it's here. Let's see. Clerics lose not... Oh, true point. Clerics lose non-concentration spiritual weapon, but they do get Find Steed because Find Steed is on the divine spell list. So all clerics have Find Steed now, which kind of is a bummer because they'll have Find Steed long before a paladin ever will. You'll have Find Steed at level 3 as a cleric, which is nutty. Whereas a paladin's not going to get it to level 5. Dude, clerics are so good. Oh my god. I'm so jazzed. I mean, I still don't know what the future of D&D is going to look like, but I love the rogue changes. I like the bard changes. I know a lot of people don't. I like the bard changes. I love these cleric changes. I like what they've been doing with the the species rather adjustments. I thought those were well done. The feat adjustments. Ranger still needs a little bit of help, being honest there, but and I like the changes to the conditions and stuff. This is really good. Like I'm honestly impressed because I really didn't think they were going to be able to do anything that made it better than 5th edition, because 5th edition had some of the best minds in the RPG space designing it, and I didn't think they'd ever come close to getting even near it, but the changes they're making seem to be purely good quality of life and resource based changes, right? Like resistance, a great example. Making it a reaction is huge. It's a way better spell. I would never take resistance before. Now, as a cleric, I will likely take resistance every time. Giving you the opportunity to how you want to focus. Letting a cleric possibly play a face role or a researcher role. And that could be a very interesting change, because how will that interact with whatever the knowledge domain cleric ultimately looks like? Will knowledge domain be coming back? Will they also be getting extra skills as well? Because if you use the knowledge domain cleric that exists currently, they get extra ability or extra skills, and they got expertise in it. So could you be a knowledge domain cleric and get expertise in the 2 skills? You also add your intelligence or your you also add your wisdom modifier too, and then all within one class have like ridiculously powerful like persuasion or what have you. It's pretty cool. It's a really cool concept. Also, they might add other feats for weapons that might like allow the warrior classes to do like dazed, maybe Dazed Strike becomes Stunning Strike for a warrior now. That could be a thing they do. Isn't it? Let's see. Did they change it? Oh, maybe they changed it. Maybe I'm wrong. Sorry, I was just very excited. Oh no. Let's see. How would you determine daze versus stun effect? I mean, it'll depend on whatever they decide. Stunning strike makes basically all their uses key superfluous. That's true, depending on what you're doing. Maybe it'll daze at lower levels, stun at higher levels. That's a possible option for the monk, right? Maybe it's dazing strike at level 5 and stunning strike at level 11, something like that. Let's see. Let's see. Daze Crusher combo. Yep. Clerics can add Blessed Strikes to Eldritch Blast. Clerics can't add... Yeah, they can't currently, yes, because of the fact that Eldritch Blast is, at least again, in the current 1D&D stuff, Eldritch Blast is not a cantrip, but they don't get Find Greater Steed, because Find Greater Steed was not in the player's handbook, but in theory they would. Cleric, as the document stands, is cranked. Agreed. Clerics get smite spells too. They do. They get access to the smite spells of the paladin from the player's handbook as well. Maybe if they succeed on the save, you're dazed. Ooh, that could be interesting. That'd be way powerful, maybe for a later thing, right? Like if they succeed on a stunning strike, then they're dazed. That could be like a level, almost like a high level, almost like a capstone feature. Like when you use your stunning strike feature, if the creature succeeds on the saving throw, they're dazed. That could be crazy. That could be cool though. So I'm curious. Yeah. Well, the next one we know, the next one's gonna have the druid and the paladin in it, which is very exciting. Because if the paladin and the druid, see, here's the thing. I'm trying to temper myself because this, like, I love paladin. I think it's probably the best design class they did in 5th edition. I don't know how much of that's going to survive into 1D&D to balance it out. But again, I thought cleric was exceptionally well designed, and I feel like cleric was generally a quality of life buff improvements. So who knows? But I'm super excited for paladin and druid. I'm very excited to see what they do with that. There's a lot of potential opportunity there, and I'm pretty excited. I'm also a little surprised Find Steed didn't end up as a class feature, because it essentially almost was. It was almost like a requirement, but maybe they will. They might with the next one when Paladin shows up, or Paladins might get Find Steed but have like a better version of it. Like I know Find Greater Steed exists, but like maybe they have like a feature that comes online at like level 7 that's like when you cast Find Steed, blah blah blah. Or like you know, at level 5 you have Find Steed auto prepared and it doesn't count against the number of spells that you prepare, and then also it does something else. They could do something like that. I didn't even know resistance existed. Yeah, most people didn't. Let's see. By and large, I really like this UA. Yeah, I agree. It's an evolution, not a revolution. Agreed. It makes sense. They mentioned in their video that if it's not in the current playtest packet, it's either not being changed. Yes, they did mention that. Their Immersion Ranger's first level feature should be tied to search and study actions. Agreed. I have to do first level feature should be tied to the search and study actions to simulate the feeling of a specialist. They had, yeah, that's not a bad idea. Some stuff needs tweaks, but overall it's an improvement. They should make smite spells non-concentration, but single round. That could be an option, potentially. Clerics can't add Blessed Strikes to Eldritch Blast because Eldritch Blast will be a class feature. Yeah, more than likely. Although, again, we live in a weird spot where if you were to multi-class a Cleric from this one D&D with a 5D&D Cleric, or 5D&D Warlock, rather, you could add Blessed Strikes to an Eldritch Blast if you were to do it now before they change it. It's like a gamey way, like a metagamey way to do it, but it's true, it would work. Let's see. Resistance spell on classes with armor still seems pointless. The armor gives you the benefits of the spell. My money is on knowledge domain not being in the 2024. It might not be. They might have just taken that whole holy order thing might have been like their nod to the knowledge domain, and then they'll just ditch it. They can reduce favorite terrain. Let's see. Imagine smite will become a paladin ability, not a spell. That's possible. I mean, it kind of already is, but the undead should be running from a cleric's holy pronouncement. They should be destroyed. I feel the new Goliath should be a new species instead of a rework. Kind of meh. Blah, blah, blah. Thoughts on the potential of Strixhaven's subclasses. Is this, you mean the ones that they had in the Unearthed Arcana that didn't get put out? I thought they were fine. I did a whole review on them. It's here on the channel if you want to see my thoughts on it. I don't remember them at the moment, but the first level domain shouldn't have been removed. I think it's fine. I have mixed feelings about the homogenization of subclass progressions. You know, I think it's fine. Am I gonna watch the video from them on it? We could do that. Not kick in until 7 since Blessed Strike. Can't you add Blessed Strikes to Eldritch Blast Raw already? In theory, yes. Well, actually, I think Blessed Strikes in the... If you're talking about the version from... Well, let's find out from Tasha's Cauldron. I'm pretty sure it was your Cleric spells. Not all spells. All cantrips, but let's see. Yeah, a creature takes damage. Oh no, I guess you're right. Creature takes damage from one of your cantrips or weapon attacks. So I guess you could. My mistake. The existing one would work if you multiclassed. So there you go. Alright, so let's go watch the video that they put out alongside this playtest.
Hello everyone, I'm Todd Henrik and I'm joined with Jeremy Crawford, and today we are talking about the 1D&D playtest. And what we're talking about today is the Ardling, Goliath, Dragonborn. We're talking about the Cleric, some changes there, a whole lot of changes actually, and the Life Cleric, as well as the glossary and spells.
So this Unearthed Arcana focuses on several different things, all a part of the 1D&D playtest. Now, this includes revisions based on feedback we've gotten on the very first 1D&D Unearthed Arcana, and then it also includes material that's new to the playtest. So the material that's new to the playtest is the Cleric, along with revised versions of several spells that appear on the Cleric's spell list. We then have revised versions of the Ardling and the Dragonborn. We also have a new species option here, which is a revised version of the Goliath, which I'll talk more a bit later, as then also some tweaks in the rules glossary that I think will interest folks.
Perfect. It's definitely like a smattering of a lot of different things in 1D&D this time around. So you want to jump into the Cleric?
Yeah, let's talk about the Cleric.
Right. So what's new for the Cleric and the Life Cleric?
So one of the main things that people will notice when they open up this Unearthed Arcana is that the Cleric's level progression has been altered in a number of ways. So if you're all right with it, I'm going to walk us through what is going on with our friend, the Cleric.
Yeah, people are going to want to know.
So first off, people love the Cleric. The Cleric consistently gets high satisfaction scores and has for the last 8 years. And our goal with any proposed revision to a class is to lean into what people love about the class while also looking for opportunities to add additional options, looking for opportunities to sort of apply oil to maybe any squeaks that are in the system. So in other words, refine things. If things weren't clear, make them clear. If things weren't seeing a lot of use in actual play, either improve them or replace them. Because as we go through each class, we're looking at, are there features in each class that maybe haven't seen much use in the last 8 years? If that's the case, those features for us are an opportunity either for improvement or replacement. Again, we look for things that are unclear, and we also look for overall cohesion. How does the leveling up process for each class play out? Okay. And then how does it interact with multiclassing? Because multiclassing is
standard
part of the
stuff,
game,
and
we want to make sure that our classes are interacting with it in a way that's appropriate. So all of those factors play into what's going on with the Cleric. So the immediate thing that Cleric players are going to see is you no longer choose, in this version of the class, your subclass at first level. Instead, subclass is at third level.
Okay.
Yeah. This is something that was true in 3 expert classes. Now, in their case, like for instance, the Ranger already was choosing its subclass at third level. Right. But here we are for the first time in the playtest, playtesting a class who previously got their subclass at first level.
Right.
The trend for the whole playtest is going to be subclasses at third level.
Gotcha.
Here's why.
Well, let's let him explain why.
What we have seen over the last 8 years is that classes that have a subclass choice at first level, and even sometimes at second level, have two big issues with them. The biggest one is they are a blocker for brand new players. So
Yeah, it's not good onboarding.
exactly. So if you have never played D&D before, many of our other classes, the fighter, the rogue, and others,
Right.
you pick at first level. You might have a minor choice to make in a particular class, but otherwise you can get playing.
Yeah.
And typically, we've designed first level to only last a session or two, and then you're moved
Yeah.
along until you finally make that meaty choice of subclass at third level. When we ask you to choose a subclass at first level, we are suddenly asking you, who may never have played D&D before, to look at every subclass option for that class before you've even played the class,
Yeah.
and make the most important decision for your class
For
that
your
you will
future,
make.
right away.
And even for a veteran D&D player, that's a tall order sometimes, because you might be coming to a class you've never played before. Maybe you normally play barbarians, and you're like, I want to give the cleric a try. First level, choose your subclass, and look at every subclass in existence. Now, we give, in the past, we would recommend you take what we think of as the default subclass, because we designed a default subclass for every class with beginning players in mind, or veterans in mind who are trying a class out for the first time. But we, for
AKA what they included in the OGL.
a number of years now, have felt that a far better approach is to let you play the class itself for a couple of levels before you make this momentous decision. And so we're seeing that here in the Cleric, where you choose your Divine Domain at third level instead of first.
And I sometimes am guilty of min-maxing myself, but when it comes to multi-classing, someone is always looking for that easy level dip to get a few extra abilities.
And that is, because I mentioned there are two main issues with the classes
Right.
that have subclasses at first level.
Right.
I mentioned the most important one of the two issues is we're asking you to make this momentous decision before you even played the class,
Right.
before you even see what it's like to be just a vanilla member of the class. But that second issue is multi-classing.
Yeah.
We have found repeatedly that the classes that have a subclass choice at first level are the ones that end up in most of the multi-class combos that people often end up sort of gritting their teeth about
Yeah.
in particular
I
groups.
see one more T-level dip in the hex blade.
And people are still going to do 1 or 2 level dips into classes. That's fine. I mean,
Right.
that's part of how multi-classing works. But we also want there to be more of a commitment to a class before you choose subclass.
Right.
And that's why subclasses are moving to third level.
Perfect.
Now, the upside for the classes themselves are many. And you see that here in the Cleric. By getting subclass off of first level, it then means we can actually do more with first and second level.
That's true.
The 2014
Makes sense.
Cleric actually had no feature at third level, other than getting spells. Now, with this approach, the Cleric has unique features at first, second, and third level.
I like it.
The Cleric actually is coming out ahead, and just in terms of sort of like quantity of abilities, by getting subclass off of first level. Because now at first level, you not only get your spellcasting, which of course is iconic for clerics, but Channel Divinity, which used to be at second level, now moves to first. And that means clerics can go back to their classic ability to turn undead starting at first level. But then we also beefed up Channel Divinity by giving it a second default option, which is Divine Spark. And this is an ability that clerics will have to channel just raw power from the outer planes to either harm somebody or heal somebody. And this is really fun, I think, as an addition for clerics, because it means clerics will have a built-in way to heal or harm independent of their spell choice. So if, say, you've decided you're not going to prepare any healing spells, you can always now lean on your Channel Divinity with Divine Spark to heal somebody, or if you're feeling salty, instead to harm one of your foes with it.
Right.
Now what this introduces also is a nice progression, where the cleric has Channel Divinity, the vanilla version, before they then get an additional Channel Divinity option from their subclass. Whereas before, you were sort of getting subclass first, then Channel Divinity, and then Channel Divinity came with it also a subclass add-on.
Yeah.
You now get to experience each of these features just as a cleric. And now there will be more of a shared pool of experience for clerics, as there is for our other classes. Because again, many of our classes already in the 2014 Player's Handbook don't choose their subclasses until third level. And the advantage experientially of those classes is you get a taste of just what it means to be a fighter before you flavor that with Battlemaster or Champion or Eldritch Knight. And here,
Can't take it with a grain of salt, but he did reference Battlemaster, Champion, and Eldritch Knight. Don't know if that's going to go forward or that he's just referencing stuff from the 2014, but there you go.
you get this new juicy version of Channel Divinity at first level. And then at second level, you get a brand new feature where you get to select kind of a little bit of job that you have in your religious order or as a sort of solo religious person that leans into some of the mechanical themes that previously were in subclass, but we've now disconnected from subclass. Here are the 3 main examples. You can choose Protector, meaning you have training with heavy armor, and you also have martial weapon proficiency. Previously, this was built into certain subclasses, while other cleric subclasses had a more sort of either spellcaster focus or more of an almost mini expert focus, where it's all about skill proficiencies. What we realized is that people often want to mix and match more. Some people, like previously, the life domain would come with heavy armor.
We said this right at the start, so I'm glad to see we're on the same wavelength anyway.
training built into it,
Right.
but some people maybe don't want to play a life domain cleric who's wearing armor.
Right.
So we've taken that choice out of subclass and put it into the class itself. So you decide at second level, are you a protector? Are you a scholar? If you choose scholar, then you get extra skill proficiencies, or are you a thaumaturge, meaning you get a little bit more of magic. Now the nice thing is later on at higher level, we let you then choose a second one of these. So you get to kind of explore your different jobs either within your religious order, or again, if you're a solo practitioner, you still get to delve into these different specializations. This then leads to then third level where you pick your subclass.
Right.
And in this Unearthed Arcana, the subclass we provide is the life domain, because we think of the life domain as the default subclass. Which continues to be all about healing. That subclass is beloved, and it is mostly in the form that people are accustomed to, with some tweaks and clarifications. Now, there's something else that is a part of the movement of the cleric subclasses from first level to third. We've made several other subclass-related tweaks. The big one being also that no longer is Divine Strike or Potent Spellcasting going to be a part of the new subclasses. This was another choice that we made as designers, similar to things like heavy armor training that we sort of pre-built into the subclasses, but which often didn't align with a particular player's fantasy for their cleric.
Told you.
Because they might play somebody where we chose Divine Strike, but they would rather be more of a spellcaster cleric and would rather have potent spellcasting. So
This is wild, because I did not watch this video before we started the stream, but these are basically all the things that I said at the start.
riffing off what we did in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, we now give you a Blessed Strikes feature instead in the base class that you can use to enhance your weapon attacks and your cantrips. So we don't make you choose anymore, and we don't make the choice for you.
Right.
Instead, we just give you this goodness in the base class. You also don't wait for 8th level anymore to get it. You now get it at 7th level in the base class. I mentioned before that at higher level you'd get another choice between Protector, Scholar, and Thaumaturge. Well, that kicks in at 9th level.
It's a lot of stuff for the cleric.
Oh, absolutely. Divine Intervention, because the Cleric is now getting their subclass feature at 10th level,
Right.
Divine Intervention has moved to 11th, and Divine Intervention now has a variable recharge rate. So before, when you used it, it was a set amount of time until you could use it again.
Right.
Now you roll dice for it, and you could potentially use it as soon as 2 days from now, if the dice roll in your favor.
Is it as powerful as it was before?
It's still really good.
It's still like limited wish.
Where we say the effect of any divine spell is appropriate. So we direct you to the divine spell list to choose an effect there that you are praying for.
What was the additional choice that you had though before, like when it came to Protector and everything else?
Oh, so at second level you choose Protector, Scholar, or Thaumaturge, and then at 9th level you can pick one of the other two that you didn't pick at second level.
Okay, perfect.
So in the end you will get 2 of the 3 choices as you move through your career as a cleric. Then, as people saw in the expert classes, the cleric's former 20th level ability is now moved down to 18th level, so you're going to get it sooner, and that is your Divine Intervention being usable even more often, and it happening automatically. There's no chance of failure, which now means at 20th level you get to choose an epic boon. And there are a few new epic boon feats that appear in this Unearthed Arcana in support of the cleric. One of those being the epic boon of fate, where the cleric can roll a die and either help somebody succeed or help someone fail.
Right.
And again, leaning into this theme of the cleric tapping into divine power and often altering reality because of that power. The cleric also has a list of suggested prepared spells, just as people have seen in our expert classes UA. And then some of those spells have new versions in the glossary that is in this UA.
Was there anything about the life cleric we need to cover real quick?
So the life cleric gets features at 3rd, 6th, 10th, and 14th level. Again, people are going to see that subclass progression has, in almost every case, been normalized, if not every case. And really here, because the life cleric is so solid, there's mostly like functionality tweaks. For example, the Disciple of Life feature that allows the life cleric to heal a little more whenever they cast a healing spell. We have clarified what was actually our original intent, but that we did not successfully communicate in the 2014 Life Domain Cleric, is that this kicks in when you cast a healing spell on a creature. There have been a lot of questions over the last 8 years about, well, if I'm multiclass, the most common combo is if I'm multiclass and I'm a druid, does this work on Goodberry? Given how we worded it before, yes, it did work on Goodberry. In this revised version, it would not, because instead it's boosting the life energy that you channel to a creature.
Right, right.
And so it's no longer this sort of mysterious thing of does it apply or not to maybe spells that produce healing effects at a later time.
Right,
It's like,
gotcha.
no, as I'm channeling life energy to a person, you can boost it.
Makes sense.
Again, it was actually always our intent, but sometimes the intent does not make it fully into the words, and then we stand by the words that are on the page,
Right.
Because that's the game that people have in their hands. So most of what's here is, it's like little tweaks, make it clearer how these things function, and the Life Domain Cleric continues to be an amazingly powerful healer. Really, if a person wants to be all about the healing, the Life Domain continues to be the best place for that.
Perfect.
Well, I guess we got 3 videos to watch,
Touching
folks.
to the Ardling, to the Goliath, and with the Dragonborn. Let's jump into that.
Yes, so we got great playtest feedback on the Character Origins UA that you and I have talked about in another video, and the feedback we got led to the revised versions of the Ardling and the Dragonborn that appear in this UA. Really, what it comes down to is we have focused the Ardling on being beast folk and have really leaned into sort of choosing the type of animal that you want your Ardling to look like, and that choice leads you to a selection of traits that reflect that. So, for
And
instance,
that's coming from the feedback. We're like, they like the idea of the Ardlings, they just want to lean in harder into that.
and lean in harder to the animal side.
Yeah.
Because the great feedback we got is that we already have in the Aasimar a celestial descendant
Right.
person, and the Ardling was previously doing a bit too much. This was the feedback we got, and reading it, I agreed. We were this is often something we have to grapple with as designers. We often want to serve up all these dishes, and sometimes we pile too many ingredients into a particular dish. And really, with the Ardling, it was we don't need it to have as much of the celestial flavor because the game already has the Aasimar. Even though Ardlings are still associated with the upper planes, people wanted more of that animal flavor, and so that's what we've done. And you end up picking, are you a climber, a flyer, a racer, a swimmer, and this gives you a special.
I love the names.
And you also
For
get
the,
keen senses
Ardling,
because
but-
of your connection to animals, and then a little bit of divine magic.
Yeah.
The Dragonborn revision is mostly all about the breath weapon.
Is this because Fizban's Treachery of Dragons was too good of a version of the Dragonborn?
It wasn't that. There were several
It
factors
was
going on.
part of it.
First off, there were people who were wondering what is the relationship of the Universal Dragonborn, which is essentially the player's handbook Dragonborn is the Universal Dragonborn. What is the relationship of that Dragonborn to the Dragonborn options in Fizban's? It's a great question. And as we talked about in another video, these Dragonborn options are meant to stand side by side with each other. You could choose the Universal Dragonborn, or you can choose one of these more specialized versions. Because frankly, there can be different versions of these species that are tailored for different settings, a different focus, and we see that with the Dragonborn. So people really liked, we saw in the feedback, really liked what we had done with the breath weapon in Fizban's. And so it shouldn't be a surprise. What people are going to see is that the Universal Dragonborn here has a breath weapon that is more now akin to what we did in Fizban's. Now, one of the things that it does that the Fizban's Dragonborn don't do is we let you choose, when you use this breath weapon, the area of effect. So you get to choose each time, is it a little cone or is it a line? We thought it would be cool to give you some flexibility because tactical realities change fairly frequently, and we want to let you determine in the moment
That's
what
really
would be
good
most tactically
change.
advantageous when you decide to unleash your Dragon Breath. The other thing that we added in is a new 5th level ability,
Yes.
which allows the player's handbook Dragonborn to fly for a short period of time. Because in a way, it was always a bit of a gap in the Dragonborn.
Right.
One of the main characteristics of
Dragons is flying.
chromatic and metallic dragons is flying.
Right.
And so I was delighted to add this in for Dragonborn at 5th level.
Perfect.
Now, joining the Dragonborn and the Ardling is the Goliath.
Strangely on theme, the Goliath now.
We've actually pondered for quite some time the possibility of the Goliath joining the other species in the player's handbook. And there are a number of reasons for that. One of the biggies is that Goliaths are connected to giants in D&D, and D&D has very rich lore about giants, and just like with dragons, the various different types of giants.
Right.
But the big design opportunity that we had not until now really leaned into with Goliaths is exploring what different types of Goliaths might be like. Because really the Goliath we've been publishing all these years is
a
the stone giant
blend,
variety.
yeah.
Right.
And now this is our chance to explore Goliaths who are distantly related to fire giants, hill giants, storm giants, cloud giants, etc. And the Goliath also being included here is here also to fill a bit of an aesthetic gap, because we realized as we were looking at the options in the PH, we really had only one option if you wanted to, the character fantasy that you
Just gonna throw it. It really bothers me that he says PH and not PHB. Just throw it out there.
were going for was playing the sort of the burly figure, which you can make a member of any of the species burly if you want.
Right.
But when someone just looks at pictures, usually what their eye will go to for this character archetype is the orc. And we realized we needed a second option because for most of the choices, we give you more than one option. And this was the rare case where there was really only one in the player's handbook, and that puts too much sort of aesthetic pressure on that one choice. And so we thought that it would be good to have another option there to show that whatever the character archetype is that you're pursuing, you have several choices, and you don't feel funneled toward one thing. And that's in our minds when it comes to just about every area of the game when you're making a choice, whether it's feats,
You guys are
classes,
funny.
or here digging into your character's origin. It's why in our classes, for instance, there is sometimes a little bit of functional overlap, say, between two classes, and they might even overlap a bit in terms of the character archetype that they represent, but then there's something about each of them that's unique, that allows you to occupy the archetype in different ways. And anytime we feel like, when it comes to a particular character archetype, we've really only in the player's handbook given you one option, we see that as an opportunity to create something else, so that you feel like you have an actual choice if that's the thing that you're drawn toward.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm excited for the additional giant options for Goliaths.
Yeah, so Goliaths are having a number of new options here. anyone who wants to continue using the very beefy Stone's Endurance that Goliaths have had till now, it's still here, and it's associated with Stone Giants. Now, there are other options, though, if you select one of the other giant types. We also,
I think it's
just
good.
as we have added a 5th level ability for Dragonborn, there's also now a 5th level ability for Goliaths. So just as we viewed No Flight as being a bit of a gap in Dragonborn, the gap we identified in Goliaths, who have always been associated as sort of distant relatives with giants, is they didn't have the ability to get large. and so we've now added in at 5th level for playtesters to try out and enjoy the ability to actually grow and get a little closer to the height of their distant giant kin.
I'm very excited for this.
Oh, we're just not gonna... No, we're just not gonna push us into the other one? What the hell is it? Didn't they have a third one? I thought there was a third video about spells. Maybe I was wrong. I thought I saw one. Maybe that was an old one. Okay, well, there you go. We did it. We reviewed, we watched this video yesterday. So, wow, holy crap, there's been like 700 plus of you here this whole time. Oh, that one, the third one is unlisted? I thought I saw one, right? Okay, let's check their playlists.
Hello everyone, I'm Todd Henrik, and I'm joined
Son
with
of
Jeremy
a bitch, it is unlisted. Look at that.
So let's dive into the glossary. We've got some interesting things in the glossary. We also have some changes to spells. What all has changed?
So first, I'm actually going to talk about what hasn't changed about the rules glossary. So one of the important things in the playtest, the document itself says this, but it's important to reiterate, is that as people are joining us in this playtest journey over the next year and a half, is each UA will introduce new or revised material, but each one will also have a rules glossary. The rules glossary is just going to grow because each UA's rules glossary replaces the rules glossaries that occurred earlier in the playtest.
Okay.
So the other material, unless it's explicitly a revised version of something earlier in the playtest, like the Dragonborn in this UA replaces the Dragonborn from the Character Origins UA, but otherwise you can take all of these UAs and playtest the material in them together. But if one thing explicitly replaces another, you use the newer thing. But then the new rules glossary always replaces the previous rules glossaries.
And also, if something is omitted from the rules glossary, it doesn't mean that thing doesn't exist. Like we talked about Eldritch Blast before. Like Eldritch Blast is still around, don't worry.
Yes, exactly. The rules glossary just contains material that either has a new definition or a rule that didn't appear in the 2014 Player's Handbook. If a rule in the game is not in the rules glossary, it means it's still in the game.
Right.
The rules glossary would have to explicitly say this rule is gone for the rule to vanish.
Perfect, that's good. To define.
But what this also means, because each rules glossary replaces the previous rules glossaries, there will be a lot of material that reappears that has not changed since the previous UA. So that's why I said I will start with the stuff that didn't change. And because now this rules glossary is getting bigger, and some of it will be the same, some of it will change, in this UA we're introducing, for the first time in this series, a little change list in the rules glossary so that you can at a glance see, here's what the new...
Like I said, the little change list is nice. A little bit more information on that change list would be huge. Like, just give us a check change document.
New stuff or the revised stuff is. So when it comes to the new and revised stuff, I'll start with the new stuff. We have several spells that have new playtest versions. Spiritual Weapon, which is extremely powerful,
Yes, it is.
now requires concentration.
Dang it.
But also another reason for this, and I've talked in years past about this, that often when we're determining what requires concentration and what doesn't, it's not only a consideration of the spell's ongoing power round by round,
The narrative of it.
but it's actually also about speed of play. If a spell has potential to bog things down because of the complexity of its ongoing effects, that spell, regardless of how potent it is likely to require concentration. And Spiritual Weapon is complex. It adds on later turns this extra attack each time. It meets all of the criteria for a spell that should require
I
concentration.
feel like you literally, as a player, need to concentrate.
Yes, yes. And frankly, we have considered in a way a design mistake of ours all these years that we didn't make it require concentration. Resistance, the cantrip, has a new playtest version here. It's akin to the version of Guidance that we're playtesting, where it's reactive rather than proactive.
So good.
And we're exploring this because this is a cantrip that, in contrast to Guidance, which possibly sees too much use, Resistance has seen very little use, and we want to see if making it a reaction will push it into the actually used category, which is important to us because we view the pages in the Player's Handbook as very valuable for the game. I mean, it's the rulebook for the game, and we want to make sure that the things that are there are actually being used and enjoyed by people. And so as I mentioned earlier on today, if something hasn't seen much use, again, that's a candidate for replacement or enhancement. And so in this case, we are enhancing resistance.
Enhance.
Yeah, we're enhancing it. Yeah, and so those are some of the explorations we're doing specifically with spells in the rules glossary. And then we also in it have some tweaks to the definitions that have already appeared. And here we've been able to apply improvements based on playtest feedback. So we've clarified, for instance, the light weapon property. There were some questions about the new functionality, so we've clarified that. There was some questions about functionality in the definition of the attack action and the equipping and unequipping of things. We've clarified that. And there's some other clarifications, and again, you can go to the change list in the UA and see what changed. One of the bigger revisions is in the new influence action, where we have an entirely different method of determining the DC for the charisma check that you make. One of the bits of playtest feedback that we got is that people wanted to see the DC have a stronger relationship to the creature you're trying to influence.
Gotcha, yeah.
And so that creature now will influence directly what the DC is for your check.
Oh no. So if I'm trying to like convince Tiamat, it's like, well, what, a DC 25?
Well, I mean, of course there's that, but
Yeah.
also it's critical to remind people that the influence action, and this was true in the previous version as well, makes it clear that a creature that is hostile to you
Not gonna, yeah.
can make it impossible for you to influence them at all with this check.
Yeah.
And also critical to point out, especially based on some of the online conversations that I saw, is that the definition of the influence action really means it when it says, this is not mind control.
Right.
Yes.
This is
Thank
not
you,
magic.
God.
It's a conversation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
only if
That's big,
the role-playing
'cause
plays out in
people-
a reasonable fashion and the DM determines that the creature is even persuadable,
Right.
does your action have any chance of nudging them in a particular direction. The other key thing to point out in the influence action is that it's a different check for each course of action you're requesting. So you don't get to kind of say, and now here are the 20 things I want you to do, and I make one roll and you go do them all. No, it's basically one roll per request. Now, the DM on the flip side might decide that with a friendly creature, there's no roll necessary. That they believe in what your character is requesting, and they are happy to do it. But again, it's a give and take between what the player character is requesting, what the attitude is of the NPC or monster, what the DM determines is appropriate, and then if a die roll is involved, well, then we'll see, will the D20 roll in your favor?
But you're probably not going to convince Vecna to help people.
Highly unlikely.
Probably unlikely.
Yes.
Yes. Unless
Yeah.
they're undead. So, perfect. All right. That sounds fantastic. Thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure.
All right, so there we go, folks. We did it. It's wild to me. I'm getting phone calls from friends that are at PAX Unplugged, and they're like, "Hey, man, are you here?" And I'm like, "No, I'm live streaming about the one D&D stuff because, like I said, honestly, this is preferred. I was able to get all of this done before I had to leave, so I can like when I'm in my hotel at PAX, I can like edit stuff down and snip things and do whatever I want to do." But I'm glad I was able to get this review out there, get this live stream out there, hang out with all of you, especially those of you who won't be at PAX. We got to have a little hangout here and a live stream together, which was awesome. So now I can go finish packing, which I should have done more yesterday, but I didn't. And then hop in my car and drive down to PAX. So, yeah, all in all, though, I'm actually surprised at how positive I feel about these changes. So, I like it a lot. I'm a big fan. So, more to come. I'll probably do a TLDR version of this at some point for folks who weren't here or don't want to sift through the whole thing. And you know, who knows, right? I have friends that are going to be at Unplugged. Maybe I'll see if I can get some of them to sit down and talk through it. And maybe we can have a little like podcast situation. I don't know, to talk about it. We'll see. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for being here and hanging out with me. If you're in the Philadelphia area and you want to hang out at PAX Unplugged and pick up some swag and stuff like that, feel free to come and find me or hit me up on social media or what have you. I'm working on throwing together a gathering. More information on that to come soon. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.